So Aditya and Shekhar, like any one of you can go as you like. So we can start with the opening remark around the topic, and also like although most of the attendees are familiar with everyone, but again, just when you start, I would request you to give some sense on your intro, please. Yeah.
Sure, Aditya, bhai, you want to go ahead first? You want
No,
me to
no,
go?
Shekhar, you go.
Okay, sir. Hello, everyone. Hopefully, you can hear me clearly. I think most of you probably know me in some form and shape via Twitter. But again, for the benefit of those whom I have not met in the past via online, this is Shekhar. A full-time job in the IT space, just like many of you probably, and part-time job in the investing space. Been an investor and part trader on and off. Been in the markets for a long time, but again, there were breaks in the middle, but consistently, at least for the last few years now. So that's pretty much about me. And in terms of the spaces today, first and foremost, I'm not an expert in the chemistry space, neither by education nor by profession, right? So not even remotely. And hence, whatever the discussion that or whatever the points that I'm going to share, they're more from the perspective of the stock investing, not so much about the company or its entire set of product suite and whatnot, right? That is one part. And the second part of the call out I would like to have is that the 2020 to 2021 18-20 month wala stock market run had probably still has some of that recency effect on us, and we sometimes we keep imagining that chemical names can give us that sort of a returns in very short span of time. But I would like to, at least I personally believe that sort of a run is over. It is not going to happen ever again, at least not in the recent times. It's once in a lifetime event where there was a need due to a global pandemic and for whatever other obvious reasons. And there was this rally that happened where a stock became 10x, 15x, 20x sort of a number. So we probably not going to see that sort of a number. But if we are here to look at chemical industry as just like any other industry where a 10, 12, 15% wala CAGR, yes, then obviously it's a good industry to be in, right? So that's one call out. And then the second aspect is that in the last three and a half years, we probably have seen two bull runs. Right now, we are probably in one of it, and hence, sometimes we keep thinking, the down cycle could only last a year and a half, and then things should move fast. And from that perspective, the chemicals have been, on the downward or the consolidation path for the last, 5 to 6 quarters, and hence, we might start imagining that from H2 onwards, chemicals should start running. I'll make a lot more money next year. If it happens, excellent, good for all of us. But I think if we want to be realistic, then let's also operate with the aspect that the recovery may happen in the H2 or it may take a little longer as well, right? We need to be pragmatic there. And the last point before I hand it over to Aditya Bhai is, but at the end of the day, if we are looking at a 7+ sort of a thing, right? 7-year or a 10-year sort of a window, then obviously chemicals is one of the right sector to be in. And whatever the consolidation that we are seeing, I think it's a good opportunity to accumulate in some form and shape. Obviously, it's stock specific story, right? Not every stock is at the similar valuation level, nor do every stock has the same sort of a growth opportunity, right? But with a 7 to 10-year window, right stock, I think right industry, and we are at the right time to do some sort of an accumulation. And hopefully, some of the conversations that we do today will help you with some part of that. So that's from me to begin with, Aditya Bhai.
Yeah. Hi, Prince. Hi, Shekhar Bhai. Hello. Good evening to everybody. I will first give you my introduction. My introduction is that I am a SEBI registered investment advisor, and I have been per se in the chemical sector for the last 10 years. Even before anybody was looking at chemicals, we were all looking at chemicals back in 2010s. And some of the companies that we were invested then, we are invested now. So let's give a disclaimer. Any stock specific name that we discuss or our view on the sector uh, is not an investment advice. Please consult your financial advisor before investing in any of the names or the sectors that we discuss. Right. So that's the first point. Uh, so yes. Uh, I wanted to start by saying this, that the stock market is like a pendulum. Shekhar bhai, if you just can mute, it is just echoing in my.
Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, thanks. First of all, I wanted to start off by saying this: the stock market is just like a pendulum. Uh, when there is euphoria in a sector, the stock market tries to extrapolate it and say that it will continue forever, and stocks go to insane valuations. Right from 2020, right up till 2021, 22, chemical stocks were at insane valuations. Market started to extrapolate. For example, one company is like Deepak Nitrite. The margins were at 28% at one point in time. On their base phenolics business, market started to extrapolate that this will continue forever. Uh, Again, at the same time, this was a short-term phenomenon that had played out from 2018, from 2020 to 2021, which was bound to die down. I remember back in 2021, I had warned everybody on the Amine twins that the margins for both of those companies are just not sustainable at about 30%. Of course, when the stocks keep going up, nobody listens to you. When the stocks keep coming down, uh, then they realize what is going on. So what happens is when the sector is in an up move, people try to extrapolate, and when the sector is in a down move, then also people try to extrapolate by saying that the story is really over. XYZ number of things, chemicals will not come back. XYZ things. It has been 10 years since the chemical sector is doing pretty well. It will continue to do pretty well. And by pretty well, I mean that not as if that the stock prices will go 5x, 10x. It is a stable compounding sector. It is not a sector. None of the sectors ever are as if that they will give fast returns. They will give slow returns. And in between, there will be periods of consolidation where they will face supernormal demand. And there the stock prices will give extra normal returns. So point number two is chemicals are now undergoing a deep down cycle. Why do I say a deep down cycle? Because point number one, the extra supernormal demand, which was there from 2020 to 2021, has not only normalized, but due to inventory, excess inventory in the channel, inventory destocking is a phenomenon that is playing out across all chemical companies, not only one or two, but across all chemical companies. Because of which, the volumes for many chemical companies are really falling. The margins for many chemical companies are really falling, and they are started to normalize now. The second point. Third point, so क्या chemical story end हो गई है? In my opinion, I have studied most of the companies that are listed, which we will discuss in the coming next 1 hour. Talking to those managements offbeat, I feel that the story is just started. The story is a 10, 15, 20-year story where chemicals are just a small part of the economy. And as the manufacturing continues to ramp up, you will find that these stock continues to become long-term compounders. Having said that, everybody should take notice that most of the chemicals that are listed are commodity chemicals and not specialty chemicals. The biggest mistake that everybody's done in 2022 is that buying commodity chemicals at the peak and then sitting on 20, 30, 40% loss. You never buy any commodity chemical at a peak. Commodity chemicals should always be bought at the bottom. So differentiating between commodity chemicals and specialty chemicals is a key factor while you are investing in this sector. And the sector is undergoing a severe downturn. I feel that the severe downturn may not end in 23 and may not end in even 24. Somewhere in 25, the normalization of demand could really happen. And from that perspective, that is what you have to bet on when you invest in this sector. Bet on very high quality companies with good corporate governance, with good balance sheets. And at the end of the day, in chemicals, chemistry matters. If a company has a moat in the chemistry, it has good market share in the chemistry, it will come back today or tomorrow. If it is a very commodity type chemical, you will find that it will take time to come. So all in all, I don't share the negative perception that the market shares, neither on IT, neither on chemicals. Every sector undergoes up cycle and down cycle. Now we are on a down cycle on the chemical side of it. We have to bear through this down cycle to make money. And as it is always said that हमको ऐसा लगता है कि हमारे स्टॉक्स कभी नीचे ना जाए, बट अगर आप लॉन्ग टर्म इन्वेस्टर हो तो ऊपर भी जाते हैं नीचे भी जाते हैं. So that will be my opening remark that Yes, chemicals are undergoing a severe downturn. We had warned about this in 21 and 22, but now the real downturn is here. Now the stocks will move from speculators to real investors.
Thanks, Aditya. So coming to Shekhar, you have been reading so many reports exhaustively. So what's your broader view as far as reports across the sectors from various research houses?
Yeah, I think Aditya Bhai touched upon couple of those points. I think one common theme across the board, in fact, not only in chemicals but even the other sectors also, is the inventory destocking happening at a much faster rate. And I think there is a bit of optimism from the brokerage house's point of view to say that H2 will be better by the time the destocking would have happened, etc. But I don't honestly get that kind of a sense. I think it will be more than a quarter or two. Could be the next financial year is where we probably see a better baseline. So I think that is one aspect that is continuing. Then the second aspect, I think, obviously is the demand, right? I mean, the destocking could have accelerated if there was a demand, but unfortunately, demand itself is going through a challenge, and hence destocking is probably taking a lot longer. I think that is again evident across the board that essentially the export players. I think the local demand seems to be good. I think Indian consumption story is still on. So whichever the companies which are more of India heavy, I think they are doing well. But those who have a significant portion in the exports, I think they are facing challenges, right? So I think within the even if there was a company that has more like a 50-40 or 60-40 or a 50-50 sort of a combination between domestic and exports, I think their export part of the story is getting affected, whereas the domestic part of the story is doing well. But it becoming net neutral, right? So you still not see much of a growth. But because you are predominantly you are getting good margins out of the exports, and because that is hurting you, your margins are also getting hurt, right? So it's a double whammy in that sense. I think that is the second aspect that is quite common. And added point to that is obviously the China dumping, which is hurting not only chemicals but everywhere. Maybe a bit more in chemistry, of course. The lack of demand in China, which everyone thought would have started. I think there was a glimpse of hope about 6-7 months ago. That China's consumption was again getting on track, but unfortunately, the last few months of data we see it is not going anywhere. So there could be a lot more structural degrowth that might be happening in China over the next couple of quarters, which essentially means that the brunt of it have to be faced by some of the Indian companies. And I think that's the third theme broadly, Prince. I think these are the three broad observations that I'm noticing across the board, irrespective of the brokerage house or irrespective of the sector.
Right, Shekhar. So Aditya, any counterpoint to this, or maybe any comments on the value chain across the companies, in line with China?
No, so Shekhar bhai is absolutely correct. So what we need to really understand here is this that look, in 2021 and 2020 and 2021, freight rates were absolutely very, very high. And because the freight rates were absolutely very high, many chemicals did not see dumping from China and various other countries like Korea. Now, what is really happening is uh, as the freight rates have really come down, Chinese are back. So this is a statement from Maulik Mehta of Deepak Nitrite that we all thought that Chinese will be out of the market and will not come and dump material. But now Chinese are really back. And look at their base phenolics business. The base phenolics business has an erosion of margin right from 28% right up till 8%. This I had warned in 2021 that the base phenolics business continues to be a very commodity type business, and it will see a margin erosion. So all the three things that Shekhar bhai said, together with the fact that Chinese are really dumping, so the three parameters are: A, inventory destocking; B, uh, US and Europe are undergoing a severe slowdown, and because they are undergoing a slowdown, there is a hit in demand. China is undergoing a slowdown as well, which is another problem, and On top of it, Chinese and Korean people are coming and dumping material into India. So what is really happening is we've got a double, triple, four times whammy, and because of this, demand and volume offtake of various chemicals across the industry is very very difficult. So let me give you an example here. Fluorochemicals are a very very niche area where because of the chemistry, because of the polluting chemistry, very few players across the world are able to manufacture fluorochemicals from the non polluting chemistry. So we find that companies like Gujarat Fluorochem, who have a very niche product baseline in the fluoropolymer space, they are saying that the demand is not really there and Chinese are really controlling what's going on. So even in niche chemistries, we are finding companies saying that the demand is very muted. So across specialty and commodity chemicals, there is a problem. Again, I'm repeating this again, and I will hit on this point again. During this phase of the entire down cycle, you need to really differentiate between a commodity chemical company and a specialty chemical company, and then really concentrate on what valuation at which it is trading. Here, the chemistry is really very important. Uh, I will hit on this in the coming 15 minutes, how you can differentiate between the commodity and the specialty chemicals players. But right now, the fact is that be it a Vinati, be it a Clean Science, be it a Gujarat Fluorochem, or be it commodity chemical companies like Deepak Nitrite or Amine Twins, they're all facing demand issues. This could get cleared out maybe this year or early next year. But in my opinion, I like to play with the margin of safety. My opinion is not until 25, nothing is going to change.
Fair enough, Aditya. So we got two speakers. We start with Raju and come to Vanshi. So Raju, you can unmute and keep your question.
Yeah, hello guys. So my question here is, when you talk about the chemical sector, you have differentiated between the commodity and the specialty. So can you give me any top five in each sector which you are looking at for the subject matter?
Okay. So I will not give you the stock names, but I will give you two or three parameters on which you will be able to differentiate between a commodity chemical player and a specialty chemical player. Point number one is the gross margin. Gross margin is the most important factor while differentiating between a commodity and a specialty chemical player. If the gross margin is anywhere higher than 50%, net, it will be a very specialty type player because it is able to dictate at which price it wants to really sell. For a commodity chemicals player, the gross margin will be 50%, below 50%, beg your pardon, and it will keep fluctuating from 20 to 50%. The end product prices, they will have no control over, and as the commodity prices keep going up and down, they will find it hard to pass on to the end supplier. So point number one, what you have to look at is the gross margin. The second point that you need to really concentrate from the gross margin comes the EBITDA margin. So for a commodity chemical player, let's say for example, let's take the example of GNFC. So GNFC will swing from loss to about a profit margin of 10 to 15%. So that's a wide variation in their profitability, and this happens because their underlying product, which is TDI, is a very commodity type product. People from across the world decide what the price really is. So the variation in the EBITDA margin, if there is a very large variation in the EBITDA margin from a loss to about 10, 15, 20%, you will find that it is a commodity chemical company. It is not a specialty chemical company. For a specialty chemical company, there will be a range. The range will not vary between 5 to 10% depending on quarter to quarter. For a commodity chemical company, वो loss में भी जा सकते हैं. The third point is the chemistry, as Shekhar was also saying. Chemistry is absolutely very important. So let me give you an example. गुजरात फ्लोरोकेम की बात कर लो. गुजरात फ्लोरोकेम ने November 2022 में they came out with a chemistry in the fluorination space, in the fluorinated polymers, where that chemistry is non-polluting chemistry. So what happened in the US and European countries was that fluorine के जो compounds बनाते हो आप, they're highly explosive and they are ozone depleting. They are ozone depleting. So regulators across the world are trying to hit down on people who are making the fluoropolymers with that polluting chemistry. So Gujarat Fluorochem came out with a chemistry where they have aced the non-polluting chemistry, and now they are slowly trying to manufacture those compounds. So if they are able to manufacture uh, from that phase where they are using the non-polluting chemistry, they have a massive advantage because और किसी को वो approval नहीं मिलने वाला है. Let's talk about another company, विनिति ऑर्गेनिक्स. वहाँ पे क्या है, ATBS करके उनका बेंजीन बेस्ड प्रोडक्ट है, और उस प्रोडक्ट के अंदर द सिंगल कॉम्पिटिटर जो था उनका, वो उस प्रोडक्ट से बाहर निकल गया. क्यों बाहर निकल गया? बिकॉज वो उनकी इतनी पोल्यूटिंग केमिस्ट्री थी कि वो नॉन पोल्यूटिंग केमिस्ट्री को मास्टर नहीं कर पाए. सो नाउ टुडे विनिति ऑर्गेनिक्स कंट्रोल्स अबाउट 80% मार्केट शेयर इन the ATBS space. So what really happens is you need to really concentrate on the chemistry that a chemical player really makes. अगर वो केमिस्ट्री को मास्टर करना बहुत ही आसान है तो बहुत सारे लोग आ जाएंगे. फॉर एग्जाम्पल एल्काइल अमीन्स और बालाजी अमीन्स देख लो आप. एल्काइल अमीन ने एसिटोनाइट्राइल का प्लान डाला, तो बालाजी अमीन्स ने भी एसिटोनाइट्राइल का प्लान डाल दिया. बहुत ईजी है एक दूसरे को कॉपी करना वहाँ पे. So this is something that you need to really concentrate on while you're buying the chemical players. The fourth point is the switching cost. Switching cost for a specialty chemical player will be very, very high. For a commodity chemical player will be very, very low. For example, on the amines, amines किस लिए यूज होती है? amines API makers यूज करते हैं आगे अपने medicines को बनाने के लिए. तो वहाँ पे companies can switch between Balaji amines and alkyl amines. Basically उनके products में कुछ ज़्यादा difference नहीं है. मिथाइलामीन इथाइलामीन दोनों ही बनाते हैं, एंड यू कैन स्विच वेरी वेरी क्विकली. नाउ लेट्स कम ऑन टू दीपक नाइट्राइड. दीपक नाइट्राइड का एक प्रोडक्ट है कॉल्ड ऑप्टिकल ब्राइटनिंग एजेंट. वो प्रोडक्ट को अगर किसी और कंपनी को बनाना है तो व्हाट रियली हैपेंस इज दे हैव टू अंडरगो अ रिगरस अप्रूवल प्रोसेस व्हिच रेंजेस एनीवेयर बिटवीन 2 years to 4 years. तो अगर कोई कंपनी स्विच करना चाहती है दीपक नाइट्राइड से, वो 10 बार सोचेगी बिकॉज द अप्रूवल प्रोसेस इज ह्यूज एंड वेरी वेरी लॉन्ग. दैट इज वेयर यू हैव टू सी ये कंपनी के प्रोडक्ट जो है वहाँ पे स्विचिंग कॉस्ट कैसी है. अगर स्विचिंग कॉस्ट बहुत ज़्यादा हाई है तो प्रीटी श्योर दैट कमोडिटी स्पेशलिटी केमिकल कंपनीज जो है उनके पास कस्टमर्स रहेंगे, कस्टमर्स मूव आउट नहीं करेंगे. तो दीज आर द 3 or 4 पैरामीटर्स. नाउ आई विल वांट टू एड्रेस अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन. Should you only buy commodity chemical companies or should you not buy? And should you only buy a specialty chemical company or should you not buy? देखो, commodity chemical companies bought at the right valuation at the bottom of the cycle will make a lot of money. We personally made money in companies like Balaji Amines. The stock went from 10 rupees to about 4,000 rupees at one point in time, and now it is at about 2,000 rupees. Even for commodity chemical players, the long-term trend, the long-term trajectory continues to remain up. Balaji means from zero turnover is up to 2,000 crores of turnover. So the long-term trajectory continues to remain up for amines, for commodity chemicals also. But what the real point is, within this long-term trend, they will continue to always be cyclical because of their no pricing power, XYZ number of things, margin variations. You have to try to buy them very near to the bottom. Bottom तो कोई किसी को भी नहीं पता है, but down cycle में उनको खरीदना है और up cycle में उनसे बाहर निकलना है, unless and until वो कंपनी एक बहुत बड़ी कंपाउंडर कंपनी है या आपको उनकी मैनेजमेंट के ऊपर बहुत भरोसा है. पॉइंट नंबर 1. पॉइंट नंबर 2, क्या आपको सिर्फ स्पेशलिटी केमिकल्स बाय करने चाहिए? एब्सोल्युटली नॉट. एक बार मार्केट को समझ में आ जाता है कि स्पेशलिटी केमिकल कंपनी है वो, सो द मार्केट गिव्स इट अ वेरी वेरी हाई वैल्यूएशन. सम ऑफ द स्पेशलिटी केमिकल कंपनीज ट्रेड एट अबाउट 10 times sales, 20 times sales, एंड वहाँ पे मार्केट छोड़ता नहीं है. सो देन व्हाट रियली हैपेंस इज, if you buy a stock at a very high valuation and there is a down cycle, there is a big chance that the stock will undergo a time correction and you will lose out on a lot of return. So you have to be very, very careful. Don't buy commodity chemicals in the up cycle. Don't buy them really very expensive. Try to buy them during a down cycle, and don't try to be a very long-term investor in them because they will undergo severe bouts of 40-50% correction. You've seen the amine twins go 50% undergo a 50% correction. Buy specialty chemical companies, stick on to them, never leave them, और वो long term compounders रहेंगे. We've seen Vinati Organics right from 2010 be brilliant compounder. So once you have differentiated between the chemistries, between specialty and commodity, then you need to come on to all of these things कि demand scenario क्या चल रहा है और क्या नहीं चल रहा है, right? I hope Raju, I have answered कि आपको कैसे differentiate करना है. मैंने stock के नाम भी 2-3 लिए हैं, but pure play मैंने कुछ stock के नाम का guidance नहीं दिया, right?
Yeah, Aditya, I respect that. So primarily, I was looking for to make a. There is no index as such for a chemical sector. So I was looking at some kind of index for each of them, a commodity or a what do you call the specialty chemicals. Any which ways you have given me some guidelines. I'll work on that further. If
So I have a video coming up. I have a video coming up during this week where you will clearly see how to differentiate between a specialty and a commodity. As you know, the SEBI regulations are there, so we will not like to recommend any stock as such per se.
I understand and respect. Thanks, Aditya. Thanks a lot.
So Raju, just to you guys can still hear me, right?
Yeah, Shekhar, go on, please.
Yeah, so Raju, just to add, I think Aditya hit it on the nail exactly to differentiate specialty versus commodity, and then at what time you should enter, what time you should exit. One additional thought process for you is there are companies which are in the transition phase, right? At any point in time, like what Aditya Bhai was saying, if you are able to identify a company which is at the bottom of the barrel, but which is about to explode, then I think that's where the actual money is made, right? So I think there, one of the differentiation is, for example, looking at the R&D spend of a company that it is doing and how it is progressing. Are the number of patents that a company is getting and how they are progressing. That is one part of the verification in terms of how a company is moving from a commodity based to a little more specialty. May not be a full-time specialty, but somewhere in the middle. See, for example, if you look at Sudarshan Chemicals, they have about 100 plus TM who do exclusive R&D, scientists and some of the technocrats. And likewise, you look at a Galaxy Surfactants, and again, surfactants are part of commodities in some senses. But then again, they have 5% of their workforce working on pure R&D, right? Nothing else. And then, you look at SRF or companies like that who've been building a lot of patents and whatnot, right? So look for some of that. If you are looking at a smaller company or looking at a commodity company, see if they have some of the differentiation. That can make a big difference between a company that wants to be commodity forever versus a company that is trying to move up the value chain. That is one part in terms of how you could differentiate. Then the second aspect is, whether it is COP26 or the Montreal conversations, or, practically we are having this climate change conversations every year nowadays. And a lot of key aspects are coming out of it, which are pretty much mandated. You don't have much of a choice because the governments of those countries are signing up those deals, and hence naturally it will fall onto all the companies in those countries, right? So one of the aspects from the chemical companies' point of view, one of the key aspects that is coming out is, wastewater treatment or the green chemistry, so on and so forth, right? So in that sense, for example, if you look at, I think Aarti Industries, if I recall correctly, majority of their plants, as an example, are now green plants, right? So they don't discharge any liquid anymore, right? So, and I think this is going to be a phenomena that we need to observe, where majority of the companies will be forced one way or the other to be greener ones. And the companies which are taking lead in getting through this are the ones who are going to stand out, because once the down cycle is done, let's say, 3 quarters or 4 quarters from now, the demand is back, inventory is done, and all the Europe is looking at us, whether we call it China +1 or China +2, whatever it may be. The European companies have a pretty stringent regulations, and they are not going to give orders to the companies who are not within those, COP26 or green compliance thing, right? So if a company is making itself ready towards it, those are the companies who are going to win those orders. So please do keep these two in your mind. Every company that you are looking at, what is the work it is doing to become a greener company in terms of the wastewater treatment or becoming even a zero liquid discharge, and what kind of R&D effort or money it is spending for future products and pipeline.
Thanks, Shekhar. So next in line is Vanshi. Vanshi, you can unmute and keep your question, please.
Hey, thanks for hosting the space, Prince. And Aditi, I've seen your post today morning about Balaji mines. It was a great analysis. Thanks for sharing. And
Thanks a
my
lot.
question was um, ethanol blending in petrol is increasing day by day in India. By next year, I think the target will be 25%. And I think this would be the great theme to play. Like there are some stocks like Praj Industries and sugar stocks. So what's your point of view on that?
Yes. So I will take this. Before I take this, one of the important points, Prince Bhai, that I remember right now, which I wanted to highlight here is, uh, we track companies across the financial space, the FMCG space, the chemical space, the cap goods space. Uh, I have not seen any sector put in capex as the chemical sector has put in. I feel that many of the companies will practically double their turnovers in the next 5 years. A lot of chemical companies, and the capex that these companies are really putting, even though the demand is slow right now at this stage, 5 years is 5 years is a reasonable amount of time, which builds in a 15 to 20% revenue growth, which I think will be achievable for a lot of these companies. Mind you, we cover from 50 to 100 chemical companies per se, and most of them are undergoing capex right now at this stage. And in FY25 and FY26, most of this capex will start to come online, and most of them have not put their capex plans on hold because they feel that this is a very temporary phenomenon that is playing out. And uh, everybody must understand, जो अप साइकिल में जाता है वो डाउन साइकिल में आता है, और जो डाउन साइकिल में जाता है वो अप साइकिल में आता है. 20 से 21 केमिकल्स के लिए बहुत अच्छा था. 22 एक डाउन साइकिल था, एंड 20 में आई डोंट नो व्हेन द अप साइकिल विल कम इन, दैट्स एनीबॉडीज गेस. बट एक बात पक्का है कि जो नीचे जाता है वो ऊपर आता है. वी ऑलरेडी सीइंग लिंक टू द केमिकल स्पेस, द फार्मा स्पेस इज आल्सो अंडरगोइंग अ सीवियर डाउनटर्न. फार्मा स्पेस के अंदर stocks have corrected 50 60 40 50 60%. Both these spaces will turn attractive at some point in time, because these spaces are very very important for human mankind to live. आप दवाइयां बनाए बिना नहीं खा जी सकते हो. So that was the broad point that I wanted to say. Coming back to Vanchi's question, yes, the blending of ethanol with petrol is a very exciting space. It has been a very exciting space ever since 2014, when there was a lot of buzz, and today also. I am very positive on blending of ethanol, as well as the electric vehicle space. You need to realize this, that electric vehicle lithium-ion batteries में जो salts लगेंगे, वो भी ये chemical companies बनाएंगे. Many companies are doing it. For example, Neogen Chemical has plans. Gujarat Fluorochem has plans. Balaji Means itself has a plan. So, per se, I am very positive on this space. The entire mobility space, be it the ethanol space or be it the EV space, very positive on it. Though these are not any stock recommendations per se, but यहाँ पे आगे जाके as we move towards green mobility, as Shekhar was already saying, you will find a lot of these chemical companies also benefit, apart from the auto companies, auto OEMs who are going to manufacture them. So yes, positive on them. Per se कोई stock recommendation नहीं है यहाँ पे, but ethanol blending has a long way to go.
Shikhar, anything you want to add?
No, nothing more, Prince. I think Aditya Bhai covered it well. If I have to say only one aspect, I will say Vanshi is, I think how some of this mobility aspects will evolve over the next 5 to 7 years could be a combination, my best guess. I think, I don't think the traditional energy will go away just like that. At the same time, there will be enough opportunity for the new energies to penetrate. So keep your eyes and ears open about how things are changing every year, and accordingly play a sort of a basket than sticking on to only one particular area.
Right. I see many familiar faces, Shubham, Ravi, Ravikant, and even Sudarshan from Beat the Street. So, guys, in case any inputs around today's topic, please feel free to join in. So, Aditya and Shekhar, before coming to Vinay, so the sheer size of capex across the industry, right? It is spanned over maybe 3, 4, 5 years. The size of the capex is huge. So as Aditya was saying, like it's not a 1 2 year story, right? It's span out, like you can play it till 28, 30 types. So what's your view around the capex going in the chemical space?
So my 2 cents, I think there are two pieces. One, I think the companies which are doing capex right now, obviously all of us know, the big names, the big boys who are spending thousands of crores into it.
Hello.
And then there is, I think someone's clock is running, I guess. And then there is a second aspect where some of the companies have actually done the capex like a year before or 3 quarters before,
Hello.
4 quarters before.
Yes,
Hi,
Shekhar, we can
Ravi.
hear you. Prince, we can hear you.
Ravi, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Sekhar, please go ahead.
Okay. So I was just saying, so one aspect of looking at the capex is, looking at, for example, Aarti or SRF or, some of the other companies where a lot of capex is happening. And hence, how does it translate into top line and bottom line over the next few years, right? There is one way of looking at the capex. And there I completely agree with Aditya and you that, down the line, 7-8 years, it's going to be an awesome journey. With, of course, some down cycles in between. The second part I was trying to highlight on is those companies where the capex has actually gone live like 3-4 quarters ago, but it was after the peak. So, for example, if you look at Sudarshan Chemicals or you look at Opcotex, these are quality players in the respective spaces, and their capex had started when probably the market or their business was at peak, and then by the time their capex went live, the downturn started. Right? The demand died down sometime last year, or even slightly before. So, and hence now, what could happen down the line 2-3 quarters if and when the recovery starts. And by the way, as a disclaimer, while I keep saying 2-3 quarters, the reality we all should remember is it could continue for 2 more years also. That no one knows. It all depends upon how the demand picks up in rest of the world, including China, right? But if and when the demand picks up, you look at Apcotex as an example. I mean, between 2022 and 2023, the kind of capex that they have added, I mean, the capacity that they have added is almost like 2.5 times, right? So, which means while they'll have to struggle with the the depreciation and the finance costs for now, but if they're able to sail through it and then the demand recovery starts, then again, not as a recommendation, but this company, for example, could do wonders. And likewise, Sudarshan Chemicals went live with their pigments and some of the yellow pigments and specialty ones last year, and then the demand died down. And to a point that they were not able to manage the financing needs, and I'm pretty sure most of the folks will remember that they had to sell a land parcel to be able to offset some of their debt burden, right? To that extent, it can hurt the companies. But I think now they're probably sitting in decent space. But again, when the recovery starts, looks like some of that recovery might be coming up into the pigment space. But if it picks up and then goes up well, then whatever the capex that they had done last year, that will come handy now, in terms of picking up the demand quickly, right? I think some of these aspects also good to see. So don't just look at the companies which are doing capex, but also take time, get to the screener, and then see what kind of fixed assets change that has happened in the last year or year and a half, and see where those companies are. You might get lucky catching them at the right time. Aditya, over to you.
Okay. Yeah. So as a disclosure, Apcotex has been in our long-term portfolio. So have been a lot of chemical stocks that we take a name. So please consider all of this, all of my view at least as a biased view, and don't take it as stock recommendation. So I'm very surprised that people talk about quarterly results on chemical stocks. In my opinion, over the last 10 years, since we've been invested in chemical stocks, we have seen cycles of demand supply mismatch, oversupply, over demand. We've seen a lot of those cycles. You never take chemicals on quarterly basis. हमारा नजरिया जो है वो बहुत छोटा हो गया है. In my opinion, you have to take them yearly. I was just sitting with the Apcotex CFO, and he was like that the whole of 23 could be not really great, and which is really okay. Every year the company does not need to perform. ऊपर नीचे होता है. It's a pure play commodity company that is there. So in my opinion, Capex for all of these companies is designed for 24, 25, 26 when the real demand comes in, the first point. The second point is as the world continues to keep growing, I have not seen any company say that demand कभी भी वापस नहीं आएगी, ऐसा नहीं होता है. हमें ऐसा लगता है कि डाउन साइकिल में डिमांड नहीं आएगी, ऐसा नहीं होता है. Even with the IT space, even with the pharma space, the demand will come back at certain point in time. Let's take an example right now at this stage. 18 से 21 तक zero credit demand था. In fact, banks were degrowing their books. Today, the credit demand is at about 20%, and everybody is running after banks. So the point is that you have to realize what you're doing, which sector is where, and then figure it out. For me, most of the companies that we track across chemicals, be it across the EV space, across the amine space, across the specialty ones, most of them are doing capexes. And as Shekhar Bhai said, that capex for some of them are already online. It is just a matter of time while demand falls in shape. Let me give you a very interesting insight. Everybody is saying doomsday. A company like Apotex reported a 20% volume growth this quarter. 20%, 20% volume growth this quarter. And it was just the pricing that had fallen. But I have not seen most chemical companies report 20% volume growth, which is excellent in my view. It just reinforces our faith that as the pricing will continue to keep recovering, the companies will do really well. So, in my opinion, I have seen consumption space is a very hyped up space where you get 4 to 5% volume growth, 5 to 10% volume growth, and the stock valuations are rock high, 50, 60, 70 times multiple. I find that over the next at least I can say that universe that we track, 10 to 15% volume growth should come over the next 3 to 5 years on all of these chemical companies. Of course, some of them are expensive, but some of them are not so expensive as well. So you need to track them really very closely. I also want to say this that chemicals is a very heterogeneous space. You need to be very, very careful while you invest here. Chemistry mode देखना बहुत ज़रूरी है. As Shekhar bhai was saying, now let me openly give you an example. गुजरात फ्लोरोकेम ने नॉन फ्लोरिनेटेड केमिस्ट्री फ्लोरोपॉलीमर्स की बहुत अच्छे से मास्टर कर ली है. तो वो अगर मास्टर कर ली है उन्होंने, यूरोप में बाकी सब फ्लोरिनेटेड केमिस्ट्री से जो बनाते हैं उनको यूरोपियन regulator जो है, it is asking them to close down their plants because they are a polluting chemistry. So from that perspective, over the next 10 to 20 to 25 years, companies like Gujarat Fluorochem will not have any problems per se because they have mastered the chemistry. So it is a very heterogeneous space. What Gujarat Fluorochem does, Navin Fluorine does not do. SRF does not do. What SRF does, Gujarat Fluorochem does not do. There is a minor overlap between all of them, but the chemistries are very, very different, and the manufacturing techniques are also very, very different. So you need to study them carefully. But pure play per se, capexes will come online. Even the EV capexes will come online, and you will find यहाँ से बहुत ज़्यादा volume growth होगा in companies का over the next 4-5 years. So here's the difference. I only talk about years. I don't talk about quarters because I feel that the next 4 to 8 quarters will not be great. But I have the capacity to bear the pain because I know that जब ये pain से बाहर निकल जाएंगे, you will find that these companies make a lot of money.
Right, Aditya. So before coming specifically to asking pockets like dyes and pigment, so we take questions from our speakers. So Vinay, you can unmute and ask your question, please.
Hi, thanks for giving the opportunity. I have a question regarding this commodity company and the specialty company, especially the chemical company and different that the company. So, do you have any category? I have studied something about Archen Chemicals. So that is a company which they manufacture bromine. It is one of the largest producers of bromine based compound. So how do you categorize this? It is a commodity company or it is a specialty company?
I can't make it. If you have understood, then if you can repeat, it will be great. I've not understood the
Vinay,
question.
your voice was
I think
breaking
so.
big time. So if you can
Yeah.
check your connection and ask your question.
Okay, okay. One second. One second. Am I audible?
Yes.
Hello. So my question is regarding just Archen Chemical Industries, it is a company which makes a bromine-based compound. So it is one of the largest company in the bromine space. So how do you categorize it? Is it a chemical commodity business or it is a specialty chemical business? So that I want to know.
Yeah, I'm studying this company. I've just studied the company today. Uh, I will not want to guide you incorrectly, so I will refrain from answering this question. I will study it and come back to you. You can DM me and we can stay in touch in the DM where I can study it and give you my feedback. But right now, I don't have an answer to this.
Shekhar, anything you want to add? Obviously,
Yeah, just at a higher level, I think Archen, if you look at it, when about 50% of the revenues come out of the industrial salts there, right? If you look at the top line segmentation, 50% come out of the industrial salts, and that's a pure commodity. There's nothing specialty about it. So from that perspective, 50% of the company, we can outright say it's nothing to do with the specialty chem. It's a pure industrial space where they happen to have that land parcel where the salts pop up and they pick it up and then they start exporting to different countries, right? That is part of the answer. The other part is, I think they were trying to do, sulfate of potash, but I don't really think it picked up so far. They've been talking about it for some time. Even in the most recent results also, we see not much contribution from that pocket of it. But I can't exactly recall, but I think I've read somewhere that they were doing a JV with one of the external companies. So in case if they're able to get the technology, that might help them to pick up the revenue stream out of this product segment as well, right? So that's the second product segment, which is not really contributing much, at least as of now. So that brings us to the bromine part of it. So based on whatever that I have read, and again, disclaimer, I have not read the company in as detail as I've read some of the other companies. And hence, I might not have all the information, but from whatever I have read, the bromine part of what Archen does is different from what Neogen has, right? So the only name that comes to mind when people talk about bromine, just not to you and me, but rather to the corporates who are the customers of these companies, is Neogen. That's the bromine guy, right? No one else. So what Archen does, in my understanding out of whatever the reports that I've read, is very basic stuff. They don't have strong intermediates of bromine or derivatives of bromine. And hence, in my humble opinion, I don't see Archen as a specialty chemical company yet. Could they become one in the future? Maybe they can. But as of today, I wouldn't really consider that. But having said that, the thing that surprises me is their margins, right? I mean, if you look at the gross margins, they're really good, which are generally like the margins that a specialty chemical player gets. While that surprises me, but at least in my opinion, I don't see that as a specialty chem player right now.
thanks, Shekhar. So we have Harish sir with us. So Harish ji, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Prince. Thank you, Aditya. I just heard, and Shekhar, both of you. My question is simple. Am I audible to you?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So, Aditya was talking about Vinati, and I'm taking this as example for the purpose of understanding gap of my understanding here. For example, Vinati is talking of ATBS, specialty chemicals, 70%, 80%. I think they're exporting. IBB, same thing. If you look at the previous history, they had a gross margin of 60%, which say even up to 20, not very long back. Today, 23, they are talking of 44% and is reducing continuously in the go by latest quarter. Now, problem is, what I heard the story from the management 2 days back, prices are stable, volumes are dwindling simply because of destocking. So my gap is that who are the ATBS users? Are they continuously in the situation that the demand would be lower or demand will improve? If you go by the management, they're talking about 2 quarters. Is it 2 quarters or is it longer than? Since you are a chemical expert here, I had the benefit of being you here. Any view on this?
So let us understand what happened with Vinati Organics. One of the biggest competitors in ATBS moved out of the ATBS space, and the gross margins and then EBITDA margins expanded to about 35%, because nobody was competing with them, and and they captured about 75% market share. Then what is now really happening is they're expanding into other products, which is IBB, butyl phenols, and antioxidants. And because of this, what is happening is the margins are normalizing to 35%, from 35% to about 25%. So a supernormal phase of very high margin. Now that margin is really normalizing. The first point. So I am not very concerned with the fall in the gross margins because I already know what is happening in the underlying business. The first point. The second point is, what about the demand for ATBS? The primary function of ATBS is in oil exploration, and in my opinion, oil exploration will never stop until you find solutions for EVs, uh, which is some time away right now at this stage. And there are various other demands of ATBS in the chemical industry, in the pharma industry, and various other aspects. But the biggest demand will come from the oil industry. From that perspective, I don't see any demand problem. Point number one. Point number two is they have seen a 60% volume expansion of ATBS over the last 2 years. And it is but obvious that at certain point in time, they will see a contraction in demand as well. You cannot have any chemical in the world, or you cannot have any commodity or anything in the world where the demand continues to keep growing every year. There will be phases where in those phases you will find that the demand grows for 2 years, it slows down 1 year, and then it grows again. So that's how it is. Point number two. Point number three is, Vinati Organics is a chemical company which is a story of brilliant management execution and very good franchise. So that is what you need to really concentrate on. People talk about Deepak Nitrite, people talk about Vinati Organics. I don't view them as chemical companies. I view them as entrepreneurs who have brilliant management execution, and and who have the ability to execute big capex plans very effectively and in a time bound manner, and have excellent customer service that is there. So in my opinion, I don't believe that 2 quarters will be the time. I think what she said is this year, the whole year, they will see a flat revenue, which is fine, which is okay. Over the next year, she says that there will be about 15% growth. That's fine. But this year, there will be a degrowth, is the broad point, which is across the chemicals industry, not only with Vinati.
Shekhar, anything on your part?
No, nothing, sir. Nothing.
Okay. So so I got few questions in the comments. One is from Manthan. So he's asking for specialty chemical. How is competition with China play out in coming years? As we see, volumes are affected mainly due to do stock and low demand. What are the chances of Indian specialty chemical companies may lose market share to China?
Should I go, Shikhar, you go?
Yes, sir. Go ahead. I will add my perspective once you come.
Okay. So basically, what happened is, yaar, ye Maulik Mehta na. So we had a brilliant interaction with Maulik Mehta, where he clearly says that, look, we started to extrapolate that Chinese will not come back and dump material into the market, which is not really the case. The Chinese will come and dump material left, right, and center, which is why you will see a erosion in prices. So let's take, for example, alkyl amines or Balaji amines. At the peak of the commodity cycle, they had a margin of about 30%. And today broadly, alkyl has reported a 17% margin, and Balaji is not reported at numbers, which is very mysterious. So 17% margins, 30% margins, all of it is because of Chinese dumping. Point number one. Chinese dumping will continue to keep coming. That's not really the point. The point that we need to really understand is, uh, point number one is, suppliers are looking to diversify their base out of China, which is a true fact. People keep saying this, that we talk about China plus one. Is it really? Yes, it is really happening. We've seen companies from Europe and US trying to have a second base apart from China. China will stay there. It is not as if that China will go away. China will stay there, but people are looking for second and third supplier so that they diversify their supply chain. Point number one. Point number two is, I believe, in my opinion, the market will continue to keep growing at about 5 to 10%. And this is from the commodity chemical side of it. For the specialty chemical side of it, let's take, for example, Naveen Fluorine's annual report, where they say that the demand for fluoropolymers could range anywhere between 15 to 20% growth. So for very highly niche chemistries, you will find that the demand can grow even faster. And then it is all about chemistry. If you have a very niche chemistry, then you can find demand. If you don't have a very niche chemistry, you will find that the demand is not really there. So it is on a case by case basis. We will not, in my opinion, we are not competing with China. China was just out of the market. China has come back to the market. We have to live with China. Chinese will dump also. We have to live with that. And now, as Shekhar Bhai was saying, that there will not be a 10x. See, the reason for that simply is that the margins are not going to 30% anymore. For example, for amines, they will stay here for about 18-20%. So I interacted with the Balaji amines management in Solapur. They were like that the margins could stay between 20 to 25%, which was, I think, very optimistic. I believe that before the pandemic, where the margins were, they will revert there, 18-20%. For all chemical companies, the margin normalization process is underway and is completing now. So we will stay with China. We will continue to gain very, very slow market share with China, from China, but both of us will stay there. And there is a lot of room for both of us to keep growing.
Correct. So just to add a little more, I think Aditya covered it really well. Just to add a little more with a couple of examples, I think it's not only that we have to live with China and its competition, because it's not going to go anywhere. But at the same time, I think, I'll give one positive example and one opportunity where things could go wrong, right? Both the ways. So, for example, China has been pretty big with the pigments, right? I mean, one of the reasons why the pigment players have been struggling in the last few quarters is China has been dumping left, right, and center. But at the same time, the companies that some of our companies, the kind of work that they have done, including some of the partnerships, for example, Sudarshan has a partnership with BASF right now, which was signed, I think, a few months ago. Obviously, we haven't seen the output of it because of the low demand. But when the demand recovers, Sudarshan Chemical is going to rely on BASF to do some of the marketing and distribution in Europe, as an example, right? So now there is obviously a big plus for Sudarshan Chemicals. Considering that they have Capex gone live last year and they have now getting into more specialized value chain, etc. So here, even if China is still going to dump or China is still going to have its own share of pigment, Sudarshan is still going to grow, right? That's the reality of it. At least that's my view. Now, talking about the second example, fluorination. So if you look at our big boys, I mean, obviously now some of the other guys are coming into the fluorination, whether it is Ingrevia or Lakshmi Organics, or I think Anupam got it with the Tanfac and a couple more names. But in spite of those fancy names that, narratives keep building, the reality is there are three big boys in the fluorine space in the respective areas. I think Naveen is in the pharmaceutical side of it. GFL is in the industrial side of it. And SRF obviously so far on the agrochem, and are now trying to, diversify. But the reality is that these three guys have really niche fluorine chemistry, which is what they're relying on. And one of the reasons why they continue to do the Capex, because they see the future. So now, about 5-7 years ago, probably fluorine was a best kept secret, right? But now it's out there. Everybody knows fluorine has good margins. It has good stability. The demand is going to be there. Probably obviously there could be new chemistries that might evolve over the period, but fluorine is not going to go away anytime soon. And hence, what is now stopping some of the Chinese companies who've been, doing the intermediates in the fluorine space from forward integrating and doing end-to-end product? No one is going to stop them. They have the balance sheet. Obviously, right now they're probably struggling. That's a different story. But some of those big players in the China do have the balance sheet strength, and they could as well get it. And if they are going to get into it, which also means it's going to be a challenge for our fluorine players, right? So it's a fact. We have to live with it. But like Aditya Bhai was saying, I think there is enough TAM and market opportunity out there for all the quality players to survive. I mean, if we are going to, start looking at the new names which are popping up on the fluorine space and then say, you know what, Naveen is very expensive, so let me go with this cheap player. We may remain cheap, right? So that's a risk, obviously, as an investor. But the quality players, I think they will have enough market room.
Agree to this perspective, Sekhar. So another question, good question, is from Gautam Gupta. He's asking, Fairchem Organics calls themselves as a specialty chemicals company, right? Their gross margins are less than 50%. Even EBITDA margin keeps on fluctuating. But products are a result of rigorous R&D. Only few manufacturers of the same products in the world which needs approvals, and approvals from clients which may take place 1 to 2 years. For example, isosteric. So management also appears to be honest. So which bucket of commodity to specialty will you put them in?
यार प्रिंस सो दिस इज अ ब्रॉड फ्रेमवर्क राइट ये फ्रेमवर्क है ऐसा नहीं होगा इन लाइफ नथिंग हैपेंस दैट एवरीथिंग इज वेरी क्रिस्टल क्लियर ए और बी दिस इज अ ब्रॉड फ्रेमवर्क दैट यू नीड टू रियली लुक एट एंड ये फ्रेमवर्क के बाद आपको अपना कॉल लेना है कि आपको क्या लगता है कि ये स्पेशलिटी केमिकल है या कमोडिटी केमिकल है लेट मी गिव यू एन एग्जांपल ऑफ सिंस यू टॉकिंग अबाउट R&D I went to the Balaji Amines plant and acetonitrile करके एक product होता है which is a very commodity type product and they are trying to engineer it in such a way that वहाँ पे उनको manufacturing cost में advantage हो जाएगा. So their individual cases पे you will have to study के वो specialty chemical है या commodity chemical है. पर my broad point was that आप पहले समझो तो सही कि specialty और commodity कुछ चीज़ है. हर एक कंपनी अपने आप को बोल देती कि मैं स्पेशलिटी केमिकल्स हूँ. ऐसा नहीं होता है. इन इंडिया ओनली 2% ऑफ द कंपनीज आर स्पेशलिटी केमिकल्स. रेस्ट ऑल ऑफ देम आर कमोडिटी केमिकल्स. दिस डाउन साइकिल इज ब्रिंगिंग आउट कि हु इज स्पेशलिटी एंड हु इज कमोडिटी. I will refrain from telling you who is commodity or who is specialty because that will be some kind of a recommendation. But I just want you to know that एक फ्रेमवर्क है वो फ्रेमवर्क के बाद आपको जाके नीचे डेवलप करना है कि वो स्पेशलिटी है या कमोडिटी. यहाँ पे स्पेशलिटी केमिकल्स भी स्ट्रगल कर रहे हैं. फॉर एग्जांपल एज शेखर भाई वाज सेइंग GFL की कुछ केमिस्ट्रीज तो बहुत ही ज़्यादा कॉम्प्लेक्स केमिस्ट्री है और स्पेशलिटी केमिस्ट्रीज है. इवन दे आर स्ट्रगलिंग देयर. So you have to just figure it out. This is just a broad framework and आप अपना कॉल ले सकते हो कि वो स्पेशलिटी लग रहा है आपको कि वो कमोडिटी लग रहा है.
So if I could just throw in a couple of simple checks that we could do is just pick up the annual report, right? I mean, if it is Fairchem in this case that you wanted to validate, pick up its most recent annual report. I think they have published it for 2023, in fact. Pick it up, just search for a few simple keywords, R&D, patent, etc., and see if that is giving you some perspective. In fact, as Aditya Bhai was responding to the answer, I quickly opened up the 2023 annual report and I've searched for R&D. It has zero expenditure towards R&D in the last couple of years, and there is no word called patent in the entire annual report. Again, I'm not saying just these two will define if something is specialty or not, but the basic definition of specialty chemical is that it is meeting certain functional need of a customer, right? If it is just a regular need, that's where it's a commodity. If it will only become specialty any of the product that any of the company producing, whether it is Fairchem or Gujarat Fluorochemicals or SRF or Deepak Nitrate, company names doesn't matter, but the product that they have that must meet certain specific functional need of the customer, right? And if it is going to be a specific need, that you can't produce with a broad brushstroke. You have to put some effort. You have to do some trials. You'll probably fail a couple of times. You will have to go through multiple iterations before a product is ready, which is solving a specific need of the customer. And that means you have to do R&D, right? If there is no research that you are doing, if there are no trials that you are trying as part of your research, then how is it a specialty product? I mean, at least I don't get it. I mean, to me, basic definition of any specialty product, a company doesn't have to be a 100% specialty company, right? I mean, that probably nobody is. Even best of the best companies have commodity products as well. But at an individual product level, even if there is not a single product where they are doing R&D, then I have a serious problem calling themselves as a specialty chemical. That's my 2 cents. But
yeah,
right,
so
to verify that.
Since Shekhar Bhai was talking, I also had a look at the company on the screener, and I found that there is a very, very wide fluctuation in the margins, to the tune of 15 to 16% variation in margins If such variation in margins do exist, I have my suspicions that it will not be a specialty chemicals company. It will be a commodity chemical company. The first basic check that I really do is I will just go and have a broad look at the EBITDA margins and try to see over a period of 5 years or 6 years, because that's the broad time where a down cycle and an up cycle has already played out, to see what's happening. Especially during these 4 5 quarters are really important for specialty chemical or commodity chemical companies, because we are now undergoing a deep down cycle, and those who are able to protect their margins now will do really well. So, for example, on a company like Apcotex, their margins will always vary between 10 to 15%, which is the broad range that we really know. So if there's such huge variation in margin of 15 to 16%, I will not. I will have my suspicions of uh, whether it is a specialty or not. I will made to think that it is more like a commodity. So that's my guess, right?
Exactly, and we need to make a segregation whether the word is being used so as to trick investors or in
So every
factual
yeah,
position is the same, right? So,
absolutely. So Prince, bhai, before you go by, I just wanted to warn people. Every time you will talk to the management, everybody will call them specialty chemical, but most of them will not be. And once you get into that trap, you will try to buy it also at 10 times sales, which is then really very expensive. So be very careful per se. Not everybody who calls them specialty chemicals are specialty chemicals person. Sorry, Prince. Bhai.
yeah, and for our attendees, like those who are joining for the first time, they can surely follow our speakers for the day. And apart from that, you can also subscribe to the YouTube channel where all these sessions are uploaded. So with this, like Aditya, coming to discussing pricing power, right? So what sense we can get? I mean, how we can find out simply by looking at the financials whether the company has pricing power or not, on the basis of which we can broadly guess whether the company is suitable for investment point of view or not. Shekhar and Aditya both.
Yeah. So let me give you an example of Deepak Nitrite or Apotex. So disclosure, both companies are our investments, and we are continue to be long-term shareholders in both of these companies. For us, 1 or 2 years don't matter. We are long-term investors in both of these companies. Uh, so let me give you a broad example of Deepak Nitrite. How pricing power really is a problem for a commodity chemical company like Deepak Nitrite. So at the top of the cycle, they had all the pricing power, and they were dictating to whom they could sell at what price. So we interacted with Vinati Organics once, who is a customer of Deepak Nitrite, and they told us that we are not able to negotiate properly with Deepak Nitrite because right now there is paucity of material, and we have to pay the price that Deepak Nitrite is really asking for. Now today the cycle is exactly reverse of what it was. Now what is happening is Chinese are really back, and they are back and they are dumping material. So most of these commodity chemical companies, they have absolutely zero pricing power. Point number one. Point number two is I will give you a straight example. 4 quarters ago, you just go to the Balaji Amines con call transcript and you will hear Mr. Reddy saying this. We don't have any pricing power over our products. Our competitor decides what is our pricing power. By competitor, he means alkylamines and the Chinese. So most of the commodity chemical companies will not have pricing power. How you can make this out from the financial is, again, the wild swings in the margins. Swings in the margins will always mean that there's absolutely poor pricing power with the companies. As I said to you, Q4 of 21, uh, Deepak Nitrite's base phenolic. Deepak Nitrite has multiple businesses, but the base phenolic business, very commodity type nature business, susceptible to Chinese dumping, had a margin of about 28%. Now it is down to 20. Now it is down to 10%. Let's take the example of Gujarat Fluorochem this quarter. Even though Gujarat Fluorochem is undergoing a severe downturn, still they were able to maintain margins at about 28%, as much as I believe. So broadly, even though the down cycle was really there, they were able to control margins. So you can say that there's a broad pricing power that they have got, not full pricing power, but a broad pricing power. You can look at Vinati Organics this quarter. Again, they had a erosion in volumes, but they were broadly able to maintain margins within the range. 2% erosion in margin was because of the inventory loss that they really had. So broadly, what will happen is uh, the margins will tell you most of the story. Broadly in 4-5% range, if the chemical company over a period of 4-5 years is able to maintain their margins, you will realize that they broadly have pricing power. They are able to pass on the raw material hikes. And right now we are in a cycle where there is a commodity deflation going on across most of the products. And at that point in time, they will have to take in the cuts that are there. So broadly, most of the commodity chemicals don't have any pricing power per se. So as Shekhar Bhai was telling about Apcotex. So Apcotex also sadly does not have any pricing power per se. It will have to uh, take whatever prices they get. And even though with a 20% volume growth that they really had this quarter, I think the best volume growth across the chemical industry, even with a 20% volume growth, still their revenues had fallen, which means that they took a pricing, uh, broadly, they took a pricing cut of more than 25%. So, pure play per se, uh, there is a 50-60% pricing power, and most of it lies with specialty chemical makers. Commodity ones will find it very, very difficult to have per se pricing power. And you can look at it per se from the EBITDA margins that they make and the volume growth number. The volume growth number is per se very important because you have to match that with revenue growth every quarter to realize what is going on. And you will realize that the stronger one will inherently outpace the volume growth that they have got in the revenue growth. So that's my 2 cents.
Shekhar bhai?
Yeah, just every part of it. I just wanted to bring in the last point that he was talking about the volume growth.
Shekhar bhai, you're losing you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now
Yes,
we can
please.
hear you.
Yeah. So I was just saying, I think the last point that Aditya Bhai was talking about, the volume growth part of it, right? I think that's the key in a scenario like this right now, where obviously most of the companies are struggling to at least be flat, right? Many of the companies are showing degrowth. So I think it is really important when the company is not really doing well, or even when the company is doing well, both the cases, it is important to differentiate the growth or the degrowth, either of them. Are they because of the value side of it, because the prices have fallen, the realization has fallen, or is it because of the volume, right? So, for example, in a scenario like a current scenario where there is a demand headwinds, if my degrowth has happened because of the value side of it, because I don't have the pricing power, or maybe the raw material prices have come down so drastically that I had to pass on, and hence my top line has come down. There could be many reasons, which is fine, because those are the reasons which are not necessarily in the control of the management, right? Beyond a point, no one can control the price beyond a point. But if the volume is reasonably decent, at least flat, then we know that company has a stickiness with the customers, or that company is able to find a way to keep pushing the bar, right? So I think in a scenario like now, at least I personally, when I'm analyzing the results of the chemical companies, I'm looking for the volume side of the growth. Is it flat? Is it bad? Is it good? And that kind of gives us some sort of an indication. But with that, so Prince Bhai, before we continue with the next question, I think Subham Bhai has been there. He's someone I really admire in terms of how he spots the companies at the bottom of the barrel. Maybe we can hear his views as well at some stage.
Yeah, Shubham bhai, please, if you're free, do join. I had sent speaker request earlier also, and also like Ravikant, I'll also appreciate, and Deepak bhai, if something you have to add, you are also welcome to the forum. So let me read out next question. Meanwhile, the question is again from Manthan. So as we see, couple of specialty chemicals are getting produced first time in India. HALS by Clean Science, for example. What are prospects of making them import substitute? Have we seen any such example in this space in the past? How would these companies play pricing battle with China if there is a Chinese producer as well?
Go ahead, Shekhar bhai. Or yeah, should I take it?
No, sir. I don't have any views. Unfortunately, I'm not tracking this particular.
I can't hear you. Can you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
now it is.
I was just saying I'm not tracking this particular one, so I unfortunately don't have
Yeah.
any views.
So I'll take this. Yeah. As I said to you before, that Chinese are here to stay. Uh, broadly, Chinese dumping does not dictate what kind of products that any of these companies really make. Everybody is aware of where China is and where what China will dump. See, the point is that here the chemistry is very important. Why does a clean science or why does a Vinati organic really score over many other companies? Vinati has been in the ATBS space for the last 15 years now, and it does not see any competition from China because the chemistry that Vinati does, I nobody has even been nobody in India or nobody across the world has been able to master it properly without not polluting the environment. So, in my opinion, that's what I keep saying. In chemicals, if you want to look for specialty, look at the niche chemistries that these companies are really catering to. Try to understand these chemistries properly. If you find that these chemistries are really very good and very hard to copy, you will find that these companies will get a lot of margins, and these will have a lot of pricing power. So, in my opinion, we have seen examples of companies producing with indigenous technologies in India and then substituting the overseas dumping that is there. So that has happened and that will continue to keep happening. And I know what Clean Science is really doing. So I don't have a problem from Chinese dumping per se, but we need to see how the trials of the products really plays out. That's what you need to concentrate on.
And one question is around Chemcon specialty. So the business economics and how, if anybody of you are tracking and any broad business view, not for buy sell, obviously.
So आज रिजल्ट आया था, so I've not been आज नहीं शायद कल आया था रिजल्ट. I have not been able to look at it, so I will not be able to comment on this.
Shekhar bhai, any view on your end? Shekhar, I cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. I was just saying I don't track this company either, so unfortunately, I can't add any value here.
Okay, so there is one question which I often receive from various people, like when we talk about Aarti Industries and the sheer volume of capex which it has planned, right? And seeing the tough times the company is facing, so some people are believing that is a good contrabat. So any views around broadly like how the business is doing and when the business cycle can take an uptick from here on?
Yeah. Okay. Shekhar bhai, you go first, then I'll.
Sure, sir. So I think my 2 cents on Aarti Industries prints is I think it's a long-term story. I mean, let's not worry about what happened last quarter, what will happen next quarter, because I think we have discussed that enough that there is a headwinds right now, and hence every company will struggle. That's a fact. But if I look at their capex, the way that they had done the capex, the way that they have done the integration, right? I think that is essentially they are redefining themselves for the future in terms of whether it is the cost optimization side or the integrating the all set of the operations or creating the entire value chain. Right at the end of the day, Aarti's value chain starts at the top of the pyramid, right? From the crude directly with all the benzene derivatives, and naturally they become they are dependent for rest of the chain, other companies. So from that perspective, I think my 2 cents and that is my view, and I'm just waiting to confirm that view over the next couple of quarters in terms of which way Aarti industry is going. But my current opinion is that Aarti Industries is setting themselves up for a brighter future where they probably can command the entire value chain with the upward, forward and backward integration, and hence, whether things may work out well or not in the next few quarters, but from the long-term perspective, it is a company that I really want to watch out for.
Aditya, your view?
Nothing to add, yaar. It's a good company, as Shekhar bhai already said. But I have my own reservations about how the company is being run, and I feel that it is the hardest hit amongst all the chemical companies which baffles me why they have been hit so hard in the on this space. But pure play from a long term perspective, it's been a wealth creator. It will continue to remain a wealth creator. There's no doubt about it per se. So Shekhar Bhai is really right there. Hi, Prince, are you there?
Yeah, Aditya. So Sajal sir, just in case you have time or willing to join for some time, please send your request. And meanwhile, I'll take other questions, Shekhar and Aditya. So one question is around the fragrance and flavors in chemicals. So that space, and the person is asking about the opportunity size and how you see that space.
So I think my 2 cents. I mean, I haven't been tracking those companies in the last couple of quarters, but I think based on what I read or what I read in the past, I think it's a smaller piece of the pie, right? You look at the overall broader end product, where the pie will fit in terms of the these fragrances. I think it's a smaller piece. So that is one point. But then from the growth point of view, I think it is one of the areas to watch out for. Obviously, in terms of the next 7 to 10 years sort of a story, whether it is part of the FMCG or part of the consumer care or the discretionary effort. So you look at from whichever angle, I think it has a good future. Now the only question is which company you want to look at, right? I mean, that's the key, because opportunity size existing doesn't necessarily mean every company will do well. But I think the framework, whatever one has, that need to ensure that they're picking the right company. But in terms of the sector, I do believe it has a bright future.
Right. Aditya?
Yes, from my perspective, it's a good space to be in. We had written about this space back in 2020, but I want to warn everybody that it's a very commoditized space where margins do get eroded very, very quickly. We've seen couple of companies reported very strong numbers about 1 year ago and are now reporting very poor numbers. So a commodity type sector where you need to really concentrate on when the down cycle is coming and when the up cycle is coming, but the demand will continue to stay as long as we are here because we will need fragrances per se.
So one question is around like for Balaji Amines, like there have been some governance issues. They have missed the deadline of filing their financial results this quarter, and earlier also like their 4 directors resigned in the month of May. They're also like diversification in the sense like getting into hotels and making losses. So I mean broadly, still Aditya, you had some view on Balaji Mines. Obviously nothing for or against the company, but from a discussion point of view.
Yes, absolutely. So we have met the management. I have been to Solapur. They have got a brilliant facility. New facilities are coming up in the name of Balaji Speciality, where they are expanding and having technologies that no other amine player will have really. But that does not shy away from the fact that what they have done. Point number one in the on the wrong things that they have really done to minority shareholder is they have opened up a hotel business. XYZ number of reasons. A chemical company cannot afford to have a hotel business, which is a drag on their balance sheet, which takes up their capital. A lot of depreciation was hit. Now it is a cash flow positive, so it's okay. But for so many years, since I have been tracking Balaji the hotel business was a drag. They could have simply formed up another company and took up the capital from their own end and tried to build the hotel. But they put it in the listed company because they wanted to get cash flow out. That's the first point. The second point is the CFL business. What a disastrous business that they really did. And on top of it, they closed down the business and merged it with the listed company so that they could cover up the losses. And the third point is the shareholding of Balaji Speciality is also not very clean, where the promoter entity has taken up about 45% stake, which is not really great. So, it's these are all facts which were well known. I had made a video also in January where I have clearly said that these are all the governance issues that are really there. But still, the stock has moved from 10 rupees in 2000 and about 13, 14 to about 4,000 rupees. The long term trend on amines continues to remain up. It will remain up. It is required in a lot of APIs to manufacture APIs. So the demand will continue to remain strong, but you'll have to live with the mischief of the management, which is why alkyl amine trades at far superior valuations than Balaji amines because they keep doing all of these things. Now there's absolutely no reason for them to delay the results since they were given 45 days and the IPO of their subsidiaries also lined up. So there's no need to do any of these antics per se. So in my opinion, there's nothing that is not known on the Balaji amines management per se, but it still continues to remain a wealth creator.
Shekhar, your view on it, especially the red flags.
I think Aditya Bhai has covered it well. Exact same opinion. I think the product portfolio point of view, it always entices me. But then the corporate governance and capital misallocation, I mean, that doesn't tick for me, right? I think Shubham Bhai just accepted the speaker note. Let's hear from him as well.
Yeah.
Yes,
So before you go there, I just wanted to pick up this point that Shekhar Bhai said. If you will go to Solapur and if you will look at their facilities, you will find that there is no other chemical player who has those kind of facilities available. But again, though, the corporate governance continues to be what it is. Sorry, Shubham Bhai, go ahead.
so basically a space where we have a duopoly. So in that case, if valuations gives you a comfort in the other company, so obviously that could emerge out as a better option out of the two that comes out from your discussion. Yeah, Shubham, by a broad view about the discussion, and you have been listening. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, it has been a great discussion so far. So I'll be very honest. I'm not very good with chemical as a space. So I mean, I joined to ask a question actually. So both to Shekhar and Aditya Bhai. So basically, what are your views on the agrochemical space? So what part of the cycle are we, and like, are you guys actively tracking any agrochem companies?
Shekhar bhai, you want to take? So I will take. I am very bullish on the agrochemical space. Some of the companies have got products which are very niche products. The leading agrochemical companies continues to do exceptionally well. One of the biggest surprises of this result season is, I believe, PI Industries because it has done exceptionally well in its space and it will continue to do so. Disclosure that we have got that inside our portfolios. So in my opinion, the agrochem space is an exciting space. It will pick up in the next 2 to 4 quarters, and it's a long-term space. It's not a short-term space. So the entire people need to really understand this that the chemical space is not a short-term space. The valuations here are very heated up, and we are undergoing a severe down cycle. So it will require certain amount of time for these companies to really recover. But in my opinion, over a longer period of time, this is providing an excellent opportunity to whoever who did not board the chemical bus over 15, 16, 17, provided you understand the chemical that these companies are really making, understand the chemistry, and understand what's going on. Also, I wanted to point out this. I believe that PI is not a story of agrochemical. It is again a story of brilliant management execution that has taken over a period of time. I believe Deepak Nitrite is not a chemical company. It's a company of brilliant company where management execution is absolutely brilliant. You need to figure out all of these things before you start to invest, and then you will start to understand that partnering with good managements will eventually mean that even though they are undergoing a severe down cycle, they will eventually come out and the returns will be made out. So we've been sitting on Vinati for about 12 years. We've seen that over short periods of time, we had no returns, practically no returns. Companies saw downturns, but even with those downturns, the CAGR for the last 12 years is about 22%, which is excellent. So, per se, agrochemical space very positive, but you need to start to understand that chemicals is a lot about management and a lot about execution as well.
So, Shubham bhai, I mean, my 2 cents is, I mean, first I agree with Aditya that I think it's going to be one of the top stories, at least the decadal story, right? If you look at the next 7-10 years, I think agrochem has to be there because it's the need of the hour. I mean, we can live away with some of the other chemicals, but without food, obviously we can't. So at least that's the thesis I build up, that agrochem is here to stay. Of course, with cyclicality in it. I think Aditya spoke about the PI. Probably all of us know about PI. Besides that, SRF is another piece, another place where it's not an agrochem company per se, but I think most of their chemistry, at least as of now, is in the agrochem space, and that's been, I think, hallmark of their product. And then the couple of other companies. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yes, Shekhar, go ahead.
Okay. A couple of other companies that I'm started to monitor now. I mean, I don't have any positions, but I'm just starting to read a little more about them. One is Sumitomo. I think obviously glyphosate ban had hurt them really bad, and I think the margins that they have posted are probably one of the lowest, right, in terms of their last couple of years. But then all of us know that their parent is awesome, and the parent spends billions of dollars just in the R&D every year. That not many can afford in that sense. And I think there has been discussion also about getting into some of the niche area, just not doing the outsourcing work for the parent. So I think if some of that turns out, then Sumitomo could be very, very interesting because they have the strength, they have Japanese quality. And then they are into both formulations and the technical side of it, right? Which is a good combination to have, which kind of offsets at least the cyclicality part of it to some extent. And then the second name that I'm started to read a little bit is about the Aztec. While obviously I think the Aztec's struggles have been documented well over the last year or so, but I think if you look at their CRAMS revenue, that started to show up now. So I think what I'm trying to now obviously read over the next couple of weeks is it sustainable? Can it grow? And what kind of a growth can it have if it can grow? I think that's the part. But at least based on the initial stuff that I've looked at, it sounds interesting. But again, very, very initial stage. So those are the 4 names that I've looked at so far. But otherwise, the rest, I think, anyone's guess.
Shubham, any follow up or another question from? Okay.
No.
So
Yeah, asking if I have more questions. Thank you.
thank you, Shubham. So Ravikant, you can unmute, and if any question, you can ask, or maybe you can keep view around the topic.
Yeah, hi Prince. I've been listening to the entire space and it has been very informative. The agrochemical part which Shekhar bhai just elaborated upon is spot on. I completely agree with him that just like in chemicals where we need to look into very, very, very carefully that which is actually specialty, in agrochemicals we need to look at the companies which have grip on all 3 parts, that is novel molecules, then your technicals intermediates and formulations. So in that regard, companies like Sumitomo, Aztec again in its new avatar under Godrej Agrovet are definitely to look up on. Are there any other names as per se, relatively smaller ones, which are not focus on the entire value chain, but have a good grip on at least 2 parts, if not the 3?
So, Ravi bhai, the only other name that, again, I haven't read this one, so please take my 2 cents just as a brushstroke. The other company that I was scanning through, or rather filtering through, I had come across Insecticides India, which again has both technicals and formulations. But what is its product strength, or what kind of work can it do in the future? I think that I haven't gone so far because I started looking at Aztec, and hence I don't have time for insecticides. But maybe one company that I want to review later on once I'm done with Aztec.
So
It's a very good company.
Any view on IPL, India Pesticides Limited?
No, sorry, I don't have it this time. I mean, I studied a little bit in the past. I mean, I think part good, part bad. I wasn't really convinced about which way I'm going, so I just put it on hold. So I didn't really drill down further.
just to add up on, the initial thesis where we were talking about, companies which have been largely into domestic business or like generic business, and then they get a breakthrough generally via technological collaboration with other giants from other countries, especially Japan. So Bharat Rasayan, in that regard, has been making some strides. So it can be like, a very interesting space to look at too. But yes, then just like Balaji Amines, it too has had its own share of corporate
Corporate governance.
governance issue.
Yeah. So you need to look at corporate governance on that one.
Yeah, it has to be taken as, with a pinch of salt. And the great adage goes that you never ever get good prices and good times together. We need to, take a call, like how it evolves.
So Ravi, recently, I also gone through the con call of Vinati Organics, and the conversation I mean, many analysts was funny in the sense they were targeting the company on missing the guidelines
Yes,
from
yes,
two
yes.
three years. So
Correct.
what was your takeaway in the sense as a business? Any views you share on that? And Aditya Shekhar, in just in case you want to add anything to that.
Prince, ji, as a disclosure, I'm invested in that company, and I have been invested in that company since 2016-17. And I do, one of the remarks which Aditya made was really, heartwarming for me, that like he doesn't look at companies, quarter by quarter per se, because I firmly believe that, any management, doesn't matter of what quality it is, they can have exact idea that how a going concern, which deals with so many dynamic factors, some of which are they're under control, and some of which are, yeah, absolutely out of their control, will evolve in a period of 3 months. The story is all about larger, track which the company is envisaging to evolve on. And in that regard, Vinati is firmly placed. Majority of the noise which comes out in the market, or in even in con calls and all, is largely because of, first of all, expectations what people have. And yes, chemicals have, because of their stellar run in past 2 3 years, they have set a very different kind of expectation. People expect 5 times, 3 times, maybe even 10 times in a year. Whereas, the reality is pretty different. And when there is a gap between reality and expectation, there will be frustration. And that is what we like. I have also, gone through the transcript of that particular con call you mentioned, Prince Bhai. It was pretty funny. For me, Vinity is a very well placed bet. And yes, in the long run of things, it will definitely create more wealth for, its stakeholders.
I do about 200 con calls every quarter. On the times that Vinity has done con calls, what the thing that she really does, she comes, she does not give any readout of what the results are, because it is assumed that everybody knows, and she straight comes to the point and explains what she is really doing. एनालिस्ट एनालिस्ट रहेंगे वो हमेशा, बिकॉज उनको हर क्वार्टर ये इससे प्रॉब्लम है कि मार्जिन 30% से 28% क्यों हो गया। ऐसे आप इन्वेस्टमेंट नहीं कर सकते हो, आप ट्रेड कर सकते हो ऐसे, पर आप इन्वेस्टमेंट नहीं कर सकते हो ऐसे। एट द
Correct.
एंड ऑफ द डे आई रन बिजनेस, एट द एंड ऑफ द डे दोज कंपनीज रन बिजनेस, एंड आई नो फॉर माई सेल्फ that business is unpredictable. Definitely, it is unpredictable, and you are hit with new challenges every day, and that is why it is called a business. Today, you have not. I have not uttered the word that I am looking to the next 1, 2, 3, 4 quarters, because I understand that I have already made huge amounts of return in the chemical space over the last 3, 4 years. The returns were all front ended. Now you will have to relax for a period of time, and then the cycle will continue to keep moving up. It's a cycle, it's a process. Vinity is, as I said to you before, and I will say this again, all those companies which have grown, it's all about management execution. Today you go out there and execute a 200 crore capex, you will find there are hundreds of challenges out there. लेट मी गिव यू एग्जांपल ऑफ एप्कोटेक्स। एप्कोटेक्स जब केपेक्स कर रहा था तो उनको कितने टाइम तक तो एनवायरमेंटल क्लियरेंस ही नहीं मिला था। बालाजी मीन्स के साथ सेम प्रोसेस था कि एनवायरमेंटल क्लियरेंस ही नहीं मिला था उनको, एंड देन ओवर अ पीरियड ऑफ टाइम दे गॉट द क्लियरेंस, दे मेड इट वर्क विद द गवर्नमेंट, and now they're expanding. So a lot of these things are not very easy for anybody to do per se. These managements are brilliant at their job, and the analysts will always be analysts. They will keep asking stupid questions. So on the lender call this quarter, people are asking why is your NIM 4% and not 4.1%. It does not matter, and the managements have no control over all of these things. वो analyst का काम है, but long-term investors must understand that the ship is going in absolutely the right direction. Quarterly calls are for that. Quarterly calls are not for nitpicking here and there.
Fair enough. So next question is like, if keeping aside your past investment in the space, if you were to look at the space today, so you would be keeping sidelines and monitoring the companies, or you will be like slowly and gradually building position. So how you exactly will be going about it?
Yeah, I will take this since I'm the fund manager here. So we have got about 12.5% exposure to the entire specialty chemical space. We continue to look at opportunities to ramp it up. We will not sit on the sidelines. Point number one. Point number two is the companies that where we want to invest. Uh, Management is the biggest margin of safety. We know that in chemicals, valuations everywhere are not very cheap. They are decent or they are slightly overvalued still, but the management execution is one of the most important bets that we are really taking, and we are on the specialty side of it, more towards the specialty side of it. Our biggest bet continues to be a commodity chemicals player, but I will make this big statement that I have not seen a better management than that in the entire country. Maybe Uday Kotak is a better one, but I again stress here again management is really very important, because the execution of those capex is very very important. Timely execution, timely getting contracts from the customer, and then getting the product shipped. So I am not a outsider to the chemical space, but I am buying slowly and steadily, because I know at least for the next 1.5 2 years this down cycle is likely to continue until the US and the European economies recover, which I think could be, as Shekhar Bhai had alluded a couple of days ago, could be with the start of the interest rate cut cycle in the developed economies, which could be somewhere during the later half of next year. So that's when you could see the demand starting to come back. But you have to play the worst case scenario and then go ahead and invest in this space.
Correct. Yeah, I think I kind of agree with the. Sorry, Prince, can you
Prince,
hear me?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I was just saying, I think completely 100% agree with Aditya Bhai here. I think, if someone wants to play the chemical space with an assumption that, in the next 2 to 3 quarters, everything will come back and we'll make money, I think at least my suggestion would be, think twice. So I'm kind of playing the chemical game via SIP route with the assumption that the next 1.5 2 years is not going to do anything. If it is flat, then I'm very lucky. But if it goes further down, then I'm still lucky because I get to add at a better price. But this is not the time to give a big allocation, right? I mean, it's at least that's not what I'm doing. Go through the SIP, wait for a certain range, define the range. I think the most important part that people, at least I've seen some of the guys don't do, is they stick on to some specific price, or they stick to some specific valuation number. But the better thing to do is define a range of what is comfort for you, where you see margin of safety, and every time stock comes into that range, pick up a little quantity. So that's the approach that I am taking right now, Prince.
Yeah, Ravi.
So I would like to add one thing here. So markets and the associated sentiment, they always move like a pendulum. So within the chemical space, we do see that there is a lot of work going on, like on fluorine and fluorine associated chemistry. But we should keep in mind that chlorine and other halogen block chemicals won't disappear overnight, and they too have their own merits in their own specific cases. So as a result of which, lot of chlorine based companies, I was going through one of the companies which deals with specifically with chlorination chemistry, and their valuations are pretty reasonable. See, the valuation, like as Sajal sir is here, and I will take liberty to quote him that never ever I have knowingly and willingly overpaid. That is the motto to go with, because these swings of the pendulum, where you will have like very high margins, you will have like some geopolitical issue due to which one particular major producer is entirely absent from the market, and your products demand prices will everything go through the roof, will keep happening, because this is the nature of the market. What helps a particular investor is the valuation comfort, and valuation comfort will only come in when you are able to, yes, follow one of the routes which Sekhar Bhai said, just elaborated upon. Follow the SIP route, keep accumulating on your holdings, which where you have sufficient conviction, and second, the valuation comfort of your holding, because volatility will always be there. One of the major reasons, like of the recent clamor we hear about chemical space, is because of the expectation built in with regard to the returns they would generate. Chemicals as a business, Prince, if we focus, then I think it is only in the second decade of 2000s that it has got its proper due respect and discovery, because chemicals is something which goes into every aspect of our life. But I don't think that before 2010, except for very astute investors, uh, anyone barely knew one or like more than five of proper chemical company names. So that, yes, definitely there is a huge amount of runway available for chemical companies. It needs to be explored very properly. And yeah, valuation comfort and gradually building upon the position, these basic tenets will definitely help one to go through this path of wealth creation very properly.
Prince bhai, since you say this, I will just like to quote this here. Uh, अभी मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि केमिकल स्टोरी तो अभी शुरू हुई है एंड
Yes.
20 25 30 साल में इंडिया में केमिकल बहुत बड़े बड़े केमिकल्स इंडिया में मैन्युफैक्चर होंगे। ये 1 साल या 2 साल की स्टोरी नहीं है, 15 20 25 साल की स्टोरी है। और एडेड विद द गवर्नमेंट वांटिंग टू मैन्युफैक्चर इन इंडिया, इट्स अ लॉन्ग टर्म स्टोरी।
Right. So Praveen is as a speaker. So Praveen, you can unmute and ask your question. Then we take from wealth purpose. Praveen, I think some issue on his end. So wealth first, Vajpayee sir, you can like unmute and ask your question if any.
तो प्रिंस, जैसे अभी शेखर जी आदि ने भी बताया कि सारी कंपनियां जो स्पेशलिटी केमिकल का क्लेम करती हैं, पर वो स्पेशलिटी केमिकल नहीं बनाती। तो जो कंपनी अपने नाम के सामने भी स्पेशलिटी लगा रही है, इसका मतलब वो भी फिर मिसगाइड ही कर रही हैं क्या? जैसे हिमाद्री स्पेशलिटी केमिकल है, चेमकॉन स्पेशलिटी केमिकल है, इनके बारे में क्या मतलब आपकी ओपिनियन है कि ये स्पेशलिटी केमिकल बना लगा रखा है?
सर, मार्केट में बहुत सारी चीज़ें अवेलेबल है। आप अगर इन्वेस्ट करते हो तो आपको जानना ज़रूरी है कि वो क्या बना रही हैं। पीपल कैन पुट स्पेशलिटी और पीपल कैन नॉट पुट स्पेशलिटी। सो मैनी स्पेशलिटी केमिकल कंपनीज डोंट हैव अ नेम ऑफ स्पेशलिटी इन देयर नेम पर से। So the point really is that you as an investor, when you are trying to buy a piece of those companies, you have to go deep and identify कि वो स्पेशलिटी केमिकल्स कंपनी है या नहीं। मार्केट में कोई आपको आके बताएगा नहीं, पॉइंट नंबर 1। अगर बताएगा भी तो सब कंपनीज बोलेगी कि हम स्पेशलिटी केमिकल्स कंपनी है। डीप एनालिसिस की बहुत ज़रूरत है इस स्पेस में, बिकॉज इट इज़ अ हेट्रोजीनियस स्पेस। ये बैंक्स की तरह होमोजीनियस स्पेस नहीं है जहाँ पे हर बैंक लेंड करती है और सेम ही बिजनेस मॉडल रहता है उनको। इनका यहाँ पे हर एक कंपनी का डिफरेंट डिफरेंट केमिस्ट्री होता है, और वो केमिस्ट्री डिसाइड करता है कि वो स्पेशलिटी केमिकल है या नहीं। नाम में स्पेशलिटी केमिकल लगाने से डिसाइड नहीं होता है कि वो स्पेशलिटी है या नहीं।
In fact, just adding to that, Vajpayee ji, I mean, not only chemicals, right? I mean, you look at EV, just about a year back or year and a half back, every other auto ancillary company was talking about EV products, right? And today we know how many of them are actually doing versus how many of them haven't really done anything. And likewise, now the last quarter or two, many of the IT companies are talking about AI. I mean, you do the con call check or you do the annual report and you just search for AI or artificial intelligence, the number of keywords you will find now versus what you would have found 2 years ago is entirely different, right? I think it's whether we call it marketing part or maybe whatever the reason it may be. I think companies tend to do this from time to time. Like Aditya was saying, it is our headache to figure out if there is truth in that or it's just a narrative.
नहीं नहीं ठीक है, अब आपने क्लियर कर दिया. देखिए ऐसा है ना कि भाई आदमी नाम से थोड़ा सोचता है कि नाम रखा है तो कुछ ना कुछ होगा उसमें, स्पेशलिटी तभी रखा होगा, इसलिए एक जनरल कॉन्सेप्ट तो यही बन जाता है. ईवी के बारे में जैसे आपने कहा बिल्कुल सही, ईवी, लेकिन अभी तक किसी कंपनी ने अपना नाम ईवी पे नहीं रखा. खाली वो क्लेम ही करते हैं कि मैं ईवी का बनाऊंगा, बट जिन कंपनियों ने मतलब अभी तक ऐसी कोई कंपनी स्पेसिफिक नहीं बना, नाम नहीं रखा कि हम ईवी के ही स्पेशली हैं. इसी तरह से आईटी करेंगे, ऐसा ही कहा गया. एआई के नाम से कोई कंपनी का नाम नेचर नहीं हुआ, इसलिए मैंने आप लोगों से पूछा कि भाई अगर किसी ने अपना नाम रख लिया, ये बात सही, बहुत से लोगों ने नाम रखा भी. जैसे आपने भी एप्कोटेक्स कहा, तो उसको एप्कोटेक्स का अगर शार्ट में नाम पड़ेगा तो उसमें शुरू में तो केमिकल कहीं समझ भी नहीं आता. तो बट जो स्पेशली अपना नाम रख रहे हैं हिमाद्री स्पेशलिटी केमिकल, मतलब नाम के सामने ऐसे जोड़ रहे हैं जैसे कि वो बिल्कुल स्पेशलिटी केमिकल ही बना.
वाजपेयी सर, यहाँ पे वो सारे जैन शिकंजी वाले हैं कि एक का पॉपुलर हो गया तो सारे जैन शिकंजी वाले हैं. सो लाइकवाइज दिस इज फॉर दैट.
ठीक है, ठीक, ये क्लैरिफाई हो गया ना इसी बात.
Right. So we have Jiten sir with us. So Jiten sir, like you were part of the discussion. So any broad views around the chemical sector, although you shared previously as well, but any comments from your side?
So I came here to listen, but one thing I want to, I mean, I've been tracking this space also, and again, my approach is also that invest very slowly into this, and invest only if you have a long-term view, at least 3 years view. Only then you should invest in this, and ready to take another 30% cut in your positions. So if you have that aptitude, I think there are many companies which offer good valuations, at least entry valuations, and with the scope that if there is more correction, you can add. So that is how, I mean, I do agree with Aditya completely that chemicals is a very long term and decadal story. So that I'm fully in sync with. These tough times will definitely pass, but also we have to understand that it is cyclical. So and we have seen that now. Margins going to 40% kind of. Even for commodity chemicals going to 35-40% and then correcting drastically. So the pendulum will keep on swinging. Now, when you have to enter, you should never enter when the pendulum is on the right side. That is, when these kind of margins are there, even for commodity chemical companies, 30%, 35%, they are not sustainable. So all your assumptions you should make on normalized margins. I think you can find out if you study the cycles of the companies, what are the normalized margins. Basically, you can take the upcycle margins and the down cycle margins, maybe average them and come out at realistic margins. Base your assumptions on that. See what is the capex they are doing, what is the revenue they can do over the next few years, and apply those normalized margins, and then you try to give a multiple to it. Maybe that would be a better way to invest in chemical companies, and that's the way to go about it. I mean, that is true for many companies, but chemicals, the swings are quite wild. So we have to basically calibrate our investments according to that.
Right, sir. So
I wanted Prince, I wanted to ask a question to Jiten sir. So sir, you are a specialist in cyclical investing, and everything that we have learned is from your wisdom. So in your experience, how do you view this cycle in broad parlance, from this down cycle to this to an up cycle that we need to move? So कितना broad time रहेगा, और अभी पार्टी का, as you keep saying, पार्टी कहाँ है अभी?
नहीं, अभी तो पार्टी में बहुत कम लोग हैं, टू बी ऑनेस्ट. ये पार्टी तो फिल आउट होगी इवेंचुअली, जब ये मार्जिन्स बढ़ना शुरू हो जाएंगे. और तब पार्टी में लोग आएंगे। अभी तो इक्के दुक्के हमारे जैसे लोग आते हैं ये ये पार्टी में। But then overall, I think a lot of people are now understanding cyclicals and trying to work on the framework, like short term headwinds, long term tailwinds kind of strategy. काफी लोग इन्वेस्ट करना शुरू किए हैं अभी उसमें. So I'm glad that I've been able to add some value to this whole thesis over the years. एंड और इसका एक नेगेटिव ये भी है कि वैल्यूएशंस उतने जूसी जो पहले मिलते थे आजकल मिल नहीं रहे, बिकॉज लॉट मोर पीपल आर एबल टू अप्लाई दीज. बट ठीक है, वो तो होता रहता है. हम लोगों के पास पेशेंस रहेगा, हमारे पास बिजनेस की समझ होगी, हम लोग साइकिल समझेंगे तो हम पैसा तो बना ही लेंगे. बट मुझे लगता है केमिकल स्पेसिफिकली, मुझे लगता है कि और 2-3 क्वार्टर का पेन हो सकता है. अगर आप मैं इसीलिए बोल रहा हूँ कि और एक्चुअली मार्जिन्स कोई इमीडिएटली अपसाइड नहीं होंगे, धीरे धीरे इम्प्रूवमेंट होगा. तो ये सब स्टोरी प्ले आउट होने को टाइम थोड़ा लगेगा. इसीलिए मैं बोलता हूँ कि मिनिमम 2-3 इयर्स का व्यू नहीं हो तो आपने बिल्कुल आप में उतना पेशेंस अगर नहीं है तो फिर सेक्टर में इन्वेस्ट नहीं करना चाहिए. मुझे तो लॉन्ग टर्म प्रॉफिट्स में इंटरेस्ट होता है हमेशा. सो आई और हम लोग काफी पीक पेसिमिज्म काइंड ऑफ इन्वेस्टिंग भी करते हैं, बट वो पोजीशन थोड़ी छोटी होती है और धीरे धीरे उसको रैंप अप करते हैं. सो दिस इज काइंड ऑफ लाइक इन पीक पेसिमिज्म दिस थिंग. अभी जैसे ये Q1 था तो सभी को मालूम था कि केमिकल सेक्टर्स में अच्छे रिजल्ट्स नहीं आएंगे. तो इसीलिए हमने देखा है कि बहुत सारी कंपनीज इवन आफ्टर बैड रिजल्ट्स दे डिड नॉट फॉल. उसका रीजन ही ये था कि मे बी इट वाज ऑलरेडी प्राइस्ड इन. एक एक कंपनी है जो क्रैम्स और फॉर्मुलेशंस और सभी जगह है, जहाँ पे मतलब इतने खराब रिजल्ट आए, लेकिन लास्ट 2 क्वार्टर से इतने खराब रिजल्ट आए लेकिन स्टॉक इज एक्चुअली अप. तो ये भी होता है बिकॉज people are understanding the long term story of companies and all that. And uh, I would have personally liked कि नीचे आवे और तो मैं लूँ, लेकिन आया ही नहीं नीचे. तो ये होता है. बट सो गुड दैट इन्वेस्टर्स, मैं ट्रेडर्स की बात नहीं कर रहा हूँ, बट इन्वेस्टर्स आर मैच्योरिंग, अंडरस्टैंडिंग थिंग्स इन अ मच बेटर वे. तो दैट इज गुड आई थिंक. और फिर हमारे लिए देयर इज होल सेट ऑफ पीपल जहां हम हमारा प्रॉफिट बनाते हैं. बेसिकली जब वो टेक्निकल चार्ट्स पे आता है, मोमेंटम में आता है, तभी हम हमारे एग्जिट लेते हैं. तो वो अपॉर्चुनिटीज हमको फिर भी मिलती है डेफिनेटली. तो हमें पेशेंट होके हमारी स्टाइल से इन्वेस्टिंग करना है.
All right, sir. So we got one speaker, Hardik. Hardik, you can unmute and ask your question.
Sir, that was my mistake. Jiten sir ने already सब बता दिया है. I am also from chemical sector only.
Okay, Hardik, no issues. So Praveen, one more call for you. Like you were on mute when I called your name previously. So just in case you have any question, though. So Sekhar bhai, Shubham, Ravikant, any question to Jiten sir?
Prince, I have one. So Jiten sir, I mean, I'm big fan of you. So I think the question that I have is, while obviously this discussion is for chemicals that we are talking about, but since we have the opportunity to ask you something, and for the broader audience, large audience joined today. So generally, based on where we are in terms of overall, just not the chemicals, but overall, any additional comments besides the chemistry?
So, I mean, you talking about markets in general?
Yeah, different sectors, not only chemical sector, but different
Yeah.
other sectors that you
So,
are looking at.
overall view on the market, we have been a bit cautious of late. I mean, I don't know, you guys know or not, we have even stopped subscription to our service at the start of this month, because we found that there is a lot of froth. And if we are not able to generate ideas where we have valuation, comfort, and all that, it is better to not onboard people. Uh, so I think some correction is already happening. So that is good. I think it is very healthy. थोड़ा करेक्शन मार्केट में इफ हो जाए तो अच्छा रहेगा मार्केट के लिए, फॉर द हेल्थ ऑफ द मार्केट इज व्हाट आई थिंक. Again, it is very very difficult to assert short term you know views. But फ्रॉथ तो बिल्कुल मार्केट में था. uh, तो that's the reason we kind of sort of, I mean, I'm not sitting on any cash, any meaningful cash, to be honest. There are still some opportunities available and all that, where we have kind of continued to add. For example, banking is something where we have added to our positions during the last couple of quarters. Also, cement is something which we added in Q4 and start of Q1. So infra is something where we added into our positions. Uh, Capital goods is where we have taken some money off the table. Uh, uh, Although we still like the sector as such, but then the valuations in certain names which we were holding were very very high, and our positions have become too large because of the stock giving you know much more than expected returns. So portfolio allocation wise, also you always have to basically rebalance and trim and so on. So that is what we have been doing. Still staying away from IT. Uh, I think we have been out of IT for a long time. Of course, we still like product companies. So product companies is where we are invested into a couple of product companies uh, where we think valuations are in favor, and the runway is huge. So those these are the investments which we kind of are doing. And just the whole idea is to avoid any big mistakes. Stay away from fancy names, stay away from stories, uh, and so on. Just be a bit conservative also is not a bad idea.
Thank you, Jiten sir.
So let me read out some question in the comments. Meanwhile, any other speaker have any other question to Jiten sir, please take the liberty to ask.
And also, Prince Sajal sir is silent. I mean, we need him to speak. Without he speaking,
Sir,
session can't come.
I checked with sir. Sir will be on listen mode only. He is busy right now. Otherwise, he would have come.
Okay.
So one question was around Galaxy surfactants, right? So I mean, let me have question on fragrance piece. Any view on volume, its volume growth and margin protection? Yeah, the company is Galaxy Surfactant.
So I could probably add, and then probably Aditya by pitch in. I think my 2 cents on the Galaxy surfactants. I think it's a good FMCG proxy, right? I mean, if I have to pick one FMCG proxy, then this probably will be. But if you look at the growth part of it, right? I think management had also mentioned, and even if you look at the past numbers, this is not a double-digit growth wala story, right? I mean, so if someone is looking at a stable company that is going to play on as a slow compounder, I think the names looks good. But it's not a double-digit volume growth. It's going to be more like 6 to 8% wala story. More like a GDP, right? I mean, if I need to summarize in couple of words, the growth will be more like a GDP because it's proxy for the consumption space. But I think what they have done in terms of how they have differentiated themselves from rest of the surfactant players is, I think they continue to evolve, right? I mean, I think earlier I was sharing an example that Galaxy has about 5% of their headcount in the R&D space. The number of patents that they have filed got approved, and the number of patents that they continue to file that keeps going up. So which kind of tells us the fact that they're always working on, they're on their toes, right? They're not settled down. And then in the surfactants space, I think there are lots of companies who do more of a commodity surfactants. In fact, most of it is commodity. But I think what Galaxy is trying to do, which is probably helping with their margins of that 12-13% wala, is because of the additional pieces that they are doing, right? In the Coca Metropole, Petain, or some of that sort of work that they are doing. So I think if I need to summarize what I was saying is, this is not a company that's going to give you money double in 1.5, 2 years. It's not going to work that way, at least in my humble opinion. But this is a good company which can keep adding value to the portfolio in a smaller increments.
So, Prince, can I ask one question to Sekhar sir?
Please, bhai.
Sekhar sir, do you have any views on ultramarine pigments?
So, incidentally, as a disclaimer, I'm holding this company.
Okay.
I think, the funny thing about ultramarine and pigments is it's more of a surfactants than pigments, right? I'm sure you already know it.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think now they are trying to expand into pigments part. I think some of the capex that they have done and a lot of capex that they have announced, most of that capex is getting into pigment space. And they're already one of the, if I'm not mistaken, they are one of the top players of the blue pigments. So in that way, they already have certain niche part of it. And you look at their cash generation, pretty solid. Very rarely you'll see a commodity sort of a company generate that sort of a cash. I think where the reason I am holding it, and this is not a recommendation by any means to anyone who is on the call, but the reason that I am holding this company is I believe that based on where they are, where most of their revenue comes out of the surfactants, and of course they have a small IT shop that we can ignore for now, but most of the revenue comes out of surfactants, and yet they're able to maintain the margins that they have today, which is pretty awesome in my opinion, right? So, even in the down cycle.
Correct, sir.
So, and hence my thesis, at least part of my thesis, is that now that they're getting into pigment space and a bit more of specialty, it could add more value to the margins and maintain the consistency. But the headache that I have whenever I talk about this company or whenever I try to read about this company is management is absolutely silent and secretive about the company. I mean, they don't tell you anything, right? So there is hardly any information that you can find. For example, you open their annual report, or you look at the quarterly updates. It talks about some capex. Capex is happening in 23. Capex is happening in 24.
Yes.
But वो capex कहाँ पर जा रहा है? Which product are you developing or designing, or which part of the industry or end user segment you are trying to hit? Is it towards the textiles? Is it towards the paints? Is it towards the auto? No one knows. I mean, so that's been my Achilles heel with Ultramarine, sir. Otherwise, I like the company and where they are in terms of stability and where they are going towards. But it's a dark story.
So, can I ask two more questions on the same line, sir?
Yes, please. If I know, I will answer.
Yeah. So, again, one point you did mention that they tried to open an IT arm also at the peak of IT bubble. Okay, if you go and check, when year it was opened, it was exactly at that time when IT bubble was at the peak. So that's something which tells about the management that they do try to go to fancy places at fancy times. And second of all, the company has cross holding with another company, another chemical company. And if I'm not mistaken, the recent spike in the price was largely triggered by that only. So, it makes me a bit uncomfortable. And yes, again, I have gone through its annual report. It's as if, Control C, Control V from the previous year, just the years are changed. They do not elaborate onto anything.
Correct.
So that makes me a bit uncomfortable, sir. And second thing is that, again in the pigment space, since I pay a lot of value to, valuation comfort, and hence, see, I'm not a small cap or large cap specific investor. It's more about value. So another company in the same field is Asahi Songwon.
Right.
So, any views on that particular firm, sir? Because at product level, their few of their pigments for a company of that size it has really grown.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's a pretty decent company as well. In fact, I did go through it. I think in about a year back, I had gone through these three plus couple more in the pigment space as I wanted to shortlist. But then at the end of the day, for whatever right or wrong reasons, I had gone with Sudarshan and Ultramarine. But when I read whatever the little I read about Asahi, I didn't really find any key red flags. So I think in my opinion, it's a decent one. But this was few quarters back though, nothing recently.
Jiten sir, do you have any views on Ultramarine and Asahi, like which you would want to share from business
Sorry,
perspective?
I will not be able to speak on any stock specific.
Okay. Yes, sir. So like if not stock specific, like in the pigment space, is there enough space so that new names can develop niche for themselves?
Frankly, I don't track that space, the space that well to comment. To be physically, so I think it will be out of
Aditya, can you add something to this? Aditya sir?
So maybe on dinner break. Jokes apart, like let me read out other questions. So Ravi, as and when Aditya comes, we'll take that question from. And like
Okay.
Shekhar, like there was one company that goes by the name of one second, Transpec Industry, right? That is like
Yes.
across textiles,
Chlorination.
pharmaceuticals, agrochemicals, and advanced polymers. So, do you think like even over diversification is a risk? And as far as like company is concerned, any broad view on the business if you want to share?
No, so this one, Transpec, I heard the name. I think I've heard somebody talking about it as well in one of the conversations, but I have not studied myself, Prince, and hence it's probably not. I'm not the right guy to comment about it. Prince, you still there?
I think broadly, let me glance at the comments once if any interesting question apart from direct stock specific discussion. Otherwise, like we are done for the day.
Yeah. So one. I mean, I think as we were talking about, the ultramarine and pigments, etc. One thing that I remembered is while pigments are used across the board in many different end user industries, one of the common one obviously is the paint side of it, right? Paints and coating and whatnot. So I think what I've by the way, this is something that I've learned from Jay. What I've learned from Jay, I think this was probably a couple of weeks ago, is the way the whole technology is evolving in the paints space. That in the past there used to be a direct connection between the pigment players and the paints players. But with the the changes in the consumer preferences, and obviously 15 years ago or 20 years ago, there was no melodrama about ye wala paint, wo wala paint, right? I mean, the kind of ads that we see now, they were never there. It was always about a color. You pick a color and you paint your house and you're done with it. But now in the last 5 to 7 years, so much of change in the way paints are being marketed or the way paints are being preferred. Even the customer's preference is changing rapidly, right? So many different variations. I think considering that, so there is an intermediate party that came into the picture, the dispersions. So I think the paint companies used to do dispersions themselves in the past. But now with so much of additional work, that is probably deviating them from their core, and hence maybe they've done the outsourcing for whatever reasons. But long story short, instead of pigments and the paints companies, so now there is pigments, dispersions, and paints, right? So I think that's a space that is worth studying, because what is happening actually and going to continue to happen is the paint companies will continue to rely on dispersions a lot more, because those are the ones who are going to take the pigments and disperse them, because they're not, soluble. And so a lot of technology is going to evolve in that space. and naturally, whichever the player who has the technology in their kitty, those guys should continue to do well as a new sub-segment entry within this entire paints space. Again, this is only paints related, so the other end user markets for the pigments, whether it is ink or textiles, etc., this has nothing to do with it. I thought I'll just add this information. If someone wants to study the sector, good to study all the three parts of it: the paints, dispersions, and pigments.
Right, Shekhar. That really helps. So, Jiten sir, like one question to you. So, basically, like in our conversation somewhere in August last year, we had a discussion on paper, right? Paper and paper product industry. So, does the outlook on the sector or maybe the companies around that changed, or like it's more or less the same? If you want to talk about.
So we all know, I mean, international pulp prices have come down quite a bit, and there was uh, basically expectations of a big correction in paper prices, and some correction did happen. But what has been really surprising is Q1 results for most of the companies, barring one or two, have been very, very good, much better than expected in the paper sector. Okay, so that is one good thing which has happened. Q2, I mean, there is some correction definitely there in Q2 also. So Q2 might not be that good. I mean, see, paper is, Q1 is not a, I mean, Q1 is a decent quarter. Q2 is very bad anyway, every year. And it improves in Q3 and then improves further in Q4. Uh, so, uh, what I expect is, Q2 is seasonally bad quarter anyway. Q2 will not be very good, but I think that Q3 onwards it will improve. And this I'm talking about at least for writing and printing section. That is where I have more comfort. Packaging board also I think should improve gradually from here. Craft paper is something where I think tough time will last for some uh, you know more time. So you have to distinguish also between the products of the companies. So I think, see, the thing is that paper is something which in Q3 we expect NEP tailwind to come in also. So demand will also improve. Uh, and what is also happening is then a lot of the demand is growing quite well actually, and there is a shift in many areas from plastic to paper in packaging. So I think the sector will do well. There some companies are at excellent valuations even now. We continue to hold them. uh, in fact, I might be in this quarter, I might be doing incremental investments in paper. So that's my view on paper.
Thanks, sir. That's really helpful. So, Shekhar, like if some time and you want to share around the textile sector, that would be helpful.
So I think textile sector is probably just in the similar space as the chemical sector in many ways. In terms of the demand and the challenges. But I think if I quickly summarize, since I think we've been long enough here, if I quickly summarize, I think sometime in Q1, sometime in March, April, there was a lot of optimism. Hey, Prince, you can still hear me, right?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, okay. So sometime in March, April's time frame, there was, I think, sudden, spark of optimism came that from H2 onwards, things will get much better, and hence, things are getting back to normal. And the typical reason is if somebody is taking the orders for Christmas, they do it at least 6 to 8 months ahead of time, right? So if a company is delivering for Christmas season, then they should get the orders at least two quarters minimum, bare minimum, because they need that much of time to manufacture and ship. So, and hence there was a sudden sort of optimism that popped up in April, and everybody started thinking, oh wow, if this good news is flowing, which means the season is coming back on track. So maybe Thanksgiving and Christmas is going to be solid. And I think that triggered the entire price action on the names, right? I think especially home textiles did really well because Christmas is a time that whether you buy a new shirt or not, you will definitely decorate your house in a better way, at least in US. So the home textile space started going up. You look at Indocount, you look at Wellspan. I think some of these names have done really well since then. But then what also happened is it took a broad brushstroke approach where practically every other company, every other textile company started going up. I mean, sometimes we don't even know why. But I think when we look at the results now, that especially the garment export players have declared, we know the reality is that it is still the same challenge. The inventory destocking is still happening. The demand is still low. So not much has changed. So I think, but maybe it is the retail money that keeps flowing in. Maybe there is some other reason, but for whatever reasons, the price correction hasn't really happened based on the results. I mean, to what Jiten sir was saying earlier on the chemicals name, that maybe it was expected. So in my opinion, just to summarize, I think home textiles probably is slightly better off in the context of things. But the pure garment players, I think it is still taking time. While whether it is Gokuldas or a couple of other names, they did say that H2 onwards it should pick up. In my opinion, based on what we are looking at, whether it is the inflation story, the interest rate story, or the demand itself not going anywhere, or the home mortgage, the amount of money that the home mortgage customers are paying now due to the increased interest, or the rents the way that they've gone up. You look at some of these aspects, especially in Europe and US. The reality is there is so much money that is going out of their pockets, which is not even in their control. Right? I mean, if the mortgage rate has gone up, then they have to pay that EMI. They don't have a choice, and hence that is hitting this non-discretionary space. And my honest view is, I don't honestly see any of these garment players doing well immediately. I'll be really surprised if by Q3 everything starts hunky dory. I think it's going to take a little longer than that.
I agree with Shekhar, if I may come in. See, some of these companies, they have not corrected. I mean, to be honest, and prices are still quite, high where you have margin of safety. And that is what, a lot of time there are inefficiencies in the market. That's a very interesting example I want to give you about NBFC, PSU NBFC. This company came with IPO in Jan 2021. And this company was doing very, very well. I think in the 2 years when it was doing very well, this company went below I mean, it never opened above the IPO price, kept on going down, was available at a 7% yield and growing at 15-20% kind of this thing. And you see, there was, despite all these good results, tremendous margin of safety, zero NPAs, obviously, and so on. This company did nothing, and in fact went on, going down, going down, and the growth actually started coming down a bit, and then it started going up. And now last 2 quarters, there is no growth, and the stock has gone through the roof. So these are the kind of inefficiencies which are there in the market. Now, as an investor, how do you basically see? We can understand valuations and so on. So we might take call, but for novice investors, it becomes very, very difficult to look at the price and then gauge. So that's why I always say that you value businesses fundamentally. Uh, as a disclaimer, I had a very large position in this company because it was a proxy to cash, 7% dividend yield, and sustainable. Uh, So, and this stock has, gone 2.5x, and I've sold about 60% of my quantity already, and maybe sell everything at this price. When it was available at like zero point 0.6 price to book, and now it is gone to 1.5 price to book. So these kind of anomalies happen in the market. As an investor, you should be vigilant, and basically, when these kind of exits are available, always never hesitate to exit.
Jiten sir, I just wanted to ask you this, since you have closed your subscription as well. We saw a similar euphoria within the small and the mid cap space in 2017, and we all know what really happened then. We continuously see in the markets over a period of 2 3 years, there's this euphoria coming up. So, where do you think are we on that euphoria, like the 2017 euphoria on the small and the mid cap space?
I don't think it is comparable to that, because I think 2016 and 17, 2 years, market, for almost 2 years, market just went on going, up. And but here what we've had is, intermediate bout of corrections. Till March, the market was correcting. So, but post, I think 30th March is where I remember very vividly. 30th March is when the market turned, actually. And so it's not been very long time that markets is in going up and so on. So I don't know, I mean, to be honest, I don't want to stay out too much, maybe have very little cash, because see, in 2017, there was a situation where, opportunities were just not available. Now there are at least some contra opportunities available for you if you have a long-term view, and there are still opportunities available if you look for the right companies at right valuations. There are fewer, no doubt, but there are still something available. So there are places to hide in that sense. Now, what the places you hide, can they correct 20-30%? Yes, that is possible anytime, right? But there are still places to hide, and where, if ideally, if you were to correct 30%, then maybe you double your position, kind of situation could also be there. So uh, there is froth, but is the bubble big enough, like what it was in 2017? And I don't think so. uh, so again, short term, I don't know, but I think this market, I mean, I'm not negative on the markets. I just want to be, focused on protecting the capital also, because we've had fantastic last, 3 years. I think the best in the life. Now, at certain stage, you also have to, basically digest those gains you made. And try to be a bit conservative and try to protect that capital which you've made in the last 3 years.
Right, sir. Sir, one person is repeatedly asking in the comments, although like financials we are not discussing, but any of the like speaker has any view on mass financials?
So Prince, I will take this. So I will not go stock specific, but what I can share is what is my view on the financials. As you know, from 2018 to 2021, we are coming out of a deep down cycle for the financials, and starting somewhere in the middle of 2022 and 2023, financials have done pretty well. PSU banks, the micro companies, all of them have done pretty well. Uh, I feel that the formation of new gross NPAs will be low, at least for the next 12 to 36 months, anywhere between 12 to 36 months, after which the formation of NPAs will start. And from there on, you will find that we are again in the NPA cycle. But at this stage, bank balance sheets are absolutely very clean, be it PSU, be it large private, be it small private, and the micro lenders as well. Formation of gross NPAs is extremely low, the second point. And the third point is the credit growth is anywhere between 14-15%. It had gone up to 18 to 20%. Now it is slowly coming back down to 14-15%, which is exceptionally very strong, very good credit growth. This will continue. and because of which all lenders are getting a leg room up. PSU banks have already been re-rated. Now I feel that record high ROEs will stay here. Similarly, for micro lenders are posting very strong numbers. We've seen micro lenders stock give very beautiful return over the last 6 to 12 months. Again, as chemicals is undergoing a down cycle, financials is going in a up cycle. The market pendulum is completely on the other direction on the financials, where they have been re-rated and everybody wants to buy financials at this stage. So you need to be very careful. Mind on the PSU banks and on micro lenders and smaller banks, don't pay very excessive valuations, because when the NPAs will start to come out, these will be the pockets which will be severely very hit, and you will find the NPAs will start to hit them, and valuations will tank. So net, they are in an up cycle. In an up cycle, as I will quote Jiten sir, in an up cycle, you need to understand when to leave the party, because credit per se will also be cyclical in nature. The economy will do well for 3 4 years and then go for a slowdown for 1 or 2 years and then pick up.
Right,
Yeah,
Aditya.
yeah, perfect view, Aditya. I think very well spoken. And I do agree with everything he said, to be honest. And so, I mean, we've had investment in PSU banks, and it's been very, very rewarding, to be honest. Far better returns than the others have given. But then we also understand that these are positional bets. This will mean we are not planning to hold for a very long time. We will leave the party in these sooner or later. But I think there is a good possibility that this sector might continue to do well for at least I think 2 years.
Right, sir. So by any chance, like any one of the speakers, any view on the shrimp industry?
I will give you a view. So, as with all export industries, you were talking about the textile industry as well. Uh, all of the export industries are undergoing a severe downturn. Similarly, with the shrimp industry, where on the shrimp industry, Ecuador is dumping material into the US, and because of which the pricing power for all of these shrimp companies is undergoing a severe downturn. Shrimp is a cyclical industry, where a lot of dumping from a lot of countries really decides what kind of margins that these companies really make. So we are in a severe down cycle. In my opinion, some of the valuations that the shrimp companies really trade at do provide in a margin of safety. However, they are very cyclical companies, and the companies themselves do not know when the upcycle will come in. There's a huge inventory destocking phase that is going on in the US, and on top of it, US GMP does quality checks as well, where a lot of these companies have had to call back their consignments. So, from a valuation perspective, these companies look very interesting. However, from business perspective, they are undergoing a elongated down cycle of about 1.5 2 years, where you need to clearly monitor when the business will bottom out and they will move up. That's my broad 2 cents on the shrimp industry.
So, Prince, can I add on to that shrimp industry question?
Please.
So yeah, I mean, as the previous speaker said, he's spot on that it's a cyclical industry. But then the as the name of this space suggests, like pessimism is an opportunity in itself. We need to monitor carefully that the factors associated to that particular sector, which is being neglected right now, how are they evolving both at the macro level and as well as at the micro level, that is the firm level. At the macro level, we need to understand that shrimp it's perishable, hence COVID was a big shock to it. Second of all, post COVID, due to several geopolitical factors, shipping logistic costs went sky high. And then last but not the least, the Ecuador dumping issue. But all these three factors have been taken care of. Ecuador, at one point of time, it was world's number one shrimp producer. It's now not there even in the first five, because the subsidy thing has been withdrawn from Ecuador. Then at the firm level, we need to see that though it's a commodity, it's like it's something which we eat, like those people, those who eat non-veg and all. So the thing is that we need to see that firms at the firm specific level, which particular firm is trying to develop a particular niche. Like generally, shrimp exports in India, they are ready to cook. Then there are players who are trying to crack in into the ready to eat segment, which has a better realization. And also majority of the exports of shrimp in from India has been dominated towards the western hemisphere, whereas the eastern hemisphere has a better like consumption, because in the western hemisphere it is a delicacy. On the eastern part of the world it is a daily daily edible basically. So we need to look at firm specific level, that which companies are there who are making inroads in markets hitherto which weren't in their export list. These factors will help you to definitely zero onto opportunities, which will whenever the sector headwinds turn to tailwinds, to identify the true winners. And yes, one needs to focus upon how the balance sheet of a particular company, because see, any industry is cyclical for whatever because of the very basic nature of markets per se. But then the thing is, companies which have very strong balance sheet, reserves position, very strong management integrity, management focus, that they do not have like n number of side businesses. Like one of the amines player, well-known amine player, has a hotel business. So we need to zero on to the companies which do not have such issues, and hence, and from there we can definitely find a winner with sufficient valuation comfort. So that were 2 cents from my side.
Really helpful. So Jiten sir, you want to add anything?
On what topic? To be honest, sorry,
The shrimp industry.
no, I don't invest in shrimp for you know religious reasons. So I don't track at all, to be honest.
Fair enough, sir. No issues. So, Jiten sir, although the telecom side is obviously out of the three players, majority of the new uh, capacity is like going to the top two. So, any view around telecom sector, and maybe due to the 5G, any ancillary space which you find lucrative at this point in time?
So, I mean, the down cycle to the up cycle play kind of, or basically, when peak pessimism to fair valuation play is over, to be honest. I think there are only two companies, and actually, pure play only one company, to be honest, right? And we all know about it. And that I think will compound 10-15%. That's because I think the re-rating or whatever, the cycle play is kind of already happened. So that should compound at 10-15%. That's about it. uh, Currently, that's my view.
Right, sir. So, guys, I think most of the questions have been well taken care of. And just in case, before we close, anything on closing remarks from the speakers, or maybe any question to the speakers.
So, I mean, overall, though we did talk about caution and margin of safety and all that, we do have to understand that I think that India is going to do well. So there is no doubt that there is still a lot of money to be made in the markets if we have a longer term view. It's just that in these bouts of uh, euphoria, how do you try to protect your downside and evolve strategies according to that for those periods. That's the only caution I have. Otherwise, I'm very very positive on the Indian markets. Long term, I think we are going to do very very well. Uh, so that's my view. So have the faith in equity is what I would say. Uh, you know, and just invest where there is valuation comfort and there is margin of safety.
Right, sir. Shekhar, on your part.
Nothing new, sir. I think we have discussed it, quite a few of the items. Completely agree with Jiten, sir. I think there's a lot of money to be made, but over a period of time. I mean, if people are looking for 2020, 2021 wala story, wo hone wala nahi hai. But those who are looking for 7-year, 10-year sort of a thing, I think there's good money to be made. Only thing that matters is which company at what valuation. I think someone puts a decent time into it. I think there is a good future ahead of us.
All right. Aditya?
No, as there's nothing more to add. Jiten sir has said everything that needs to be said. Uh, the stock market is like a pendulum. It moves swings from over exuberance to over pessimism, and every sector undergoes this. Chemical sector, pharma sector, IT sector, or now the textile sector, all are undergoing a down cycle. Spot your bets correctly. Uh, Spot good quality companies which have the ability to undergo this downturn properly. Strong balance sheet, strong management. You will be able to do really well. That's what time and again every cyclical investor has really done. Bet on companies which will be able to survive this downturn properly, and when the upcycle really comes, you will find that those companies make a lot of money.
So Aditya, Ishmohit has also joined. So Ishmohit, any broad view which you carry around the sector, or maybe anything if you were listening?
Sorry, I just joined. So hopefully all of you are doing well. And Independence Day पे यार आराम से छुट्टी के दिन पे आके स्पेस सुन रहा पूरा इतनी देर का. So ऐसे यार highly suggest this to read this Capital Returns करके एक book है Edward Chancellor का. एंड ऑल्सो जितेन सर का ना वैल्यू पे एक पूरा थ्रेड है सिक्लिकल्स पे. ये दोनों चीज़ें आई थिंक एवरी वन शुड रीड बिकॉज यू गेट एन आइडिया कि हाउ वैल्यूएशंस रिवॉल्व. एंड ऑल्सो वेन एवर देयर इज अ डाउन टर्न इन अ साइकिल in a sector or in anything else. So there are two types of companies which emerge. So again, पहली चीज़ there is no buy or sell recommendation that I am giving. तो 2017 में जब NBFC का डाउनटर्न आया था तो एक उस डाउनटर्न में basically there were companies like DHFL and all, and then there were companies like Bajaj Finance as well, which recovered in no time after one and a half year of correction. I think Bajaj Finance also fell at like 30-35% at that time when there was this IL&FS crisis. So that is the type of companies, the latter category of companies in a down cycle you should be really looking at. कि चलो उतना pedigree भी ना हो, but the balance sheets are clean, they can survive these downturns, they are willing to talk to you, they are not running away, they are basically market leaders, supply side dominance है products में. बस pessimism की वजह से the valuations are at such levels that you can still find them to be reasonable. So that is that, Prince.
Right, Ishmohit. So any question, Ravikant, Kaushik, on your part, Shubham bhai?
So if I may add like a few things from my side. So I think overall, I think it's very important to know where the value is emerging, but don't go like so. Essentially, in cyclicals, I would say you should know that okay, this is currently in a down cycle, but as Jiten sir mentioned, like slowly nibbling is important. Like a lot of times, I've seen like people go that okay, it's a down cycle, we'll go very gungo about it, right? I think it is like you never know when the cycle, like how long the downturn can continue in a lot of these things, like maybe 2 more years, maybe 1 more year, right? So I think portfolio allocation, so like in generally I would say always try to keep your portfolio focused towards where the strength is, but keep in the back of your mind where the value is, right? So that when the cycle turns and when like there is margin improvement, so you know that okay, this is the place I have to be.
Right. So Kaushik, okay, sorry, I forgot. Yeah, Ravi.
So like I would like to just add one point which I have observed of late. So like quite recently I came across like Twitter message only which said that like pharma index is touching all time high. The whenever any investor comes across such messages, then there is a perception that things are getting overheated. But one needs to in the similar fashion, regarding the recent rally in the market, like people try to compare it with 2007 or 8. One needs to drill down a bit deeper to understand what factors, in the first part, make this current run up more sustainable, and what are the challenges. At the same time, we need to focus that there will always be pockets where there will be significant opportunity which needs to be looked into. For that matter, we have already discussed agrochemical space, and dyes and pigment, like that. So that is where we need, as an investor, we need to focus upon. That's what I wanted to add.
Thanks. So, Kaushik, you go next, and then we go with Raghu and Sandeep.
Thanks, Prince, for giving an opportunity. And I just joined very late, but my point of view is that very simple. Why recently all the pharma companies are having such a kind of up move? This is because of the accounting formulas that they use it. If you see the API prices, the raw material prices what they were using was very low at that time, and they use a method called as FIFO. Because of that, their realizations increase, and realizations leading them to margin expansion and the bottom line increase. And also coming up with a sales increase, the entire sector looked out very pretty good. So currently, if you look at chemical sectors, a lot of their raw material prices have increased, and that is the reason their margins have gone down, and sales are also a bit slightly lower in size. Both the part hitting them, they are not able to do great. But this is a small cycle which will be like turning very easily in near future. And if someone follows a P&L statement for him to value any company, then this is an effect of just inventory valuation and the capex, COX valuation. This is very small cycle, and this will turn very easily. So in short run, this is a small pendulum, but in the longer run, both the sectors are looking very attractive. That's all I wanted to add. Thanks, Prince.
Thanks. Sandeep, you can unmute and ask your question, please.
Yeah, how you can track the market through the moving average index. Am I audible?
ये तो टेक्निकल एनालिस्ट वाला क्वेश्चन हो गया फिर.
Yeah. But
Correct.
I want
It's
to be
pretty.
optimistic right now. Actually, hydrocarbon is also in the progressive mid, right? So I want to know, because hydrocarbon, if you can see the reliance and all those things. So the growth is right now in term of hydrocarbon, we can see the growth 60 to 70% ratio. So क्या ये रिमूव नहीं कर सकता है केमिकल सेक्टर को, अगर हाइड्रोकार्बन के पर्सपेक्टिव पर अगर अपन देखें तो?
Anyone?
Hello.
Yes, Sandeep,
I
we
could not
got your
understand the
question.
question properly.
Sorry.
Sandeep, can you repeat your question properly?
Sandeep, you are on mute. Can you please repeat the question once again?
Yeah, how can we relate the hydrocarbon in the chemical sector right now? Because hydrocarbon, if we can see on the US, UK, and all those country, hydrocarbon already implement हो चुका है. बहुत सारे कार companies हो गए, whether Hyundai हो गई, whether ये सारे कार company है जो hydrocarbon को promote कर रहे हैं. तो क्या हाइड्रोकार्बन इंडिया में, अगर अपन केमिकल सेक्टर को अगर रिलेट कर सके, हाइड्रोकार्बन को कैसे अपन रिलेट कर सकते हैं? How can we relate hydrocarbon in the chemical sector?
So are you talking about hydrogen?
Yes,
Yeah,
hydrogen
yeah,
is a
Hydrogen
fuel.
yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
hydrocarbon? So, are you talking about hydrogen or are you talking about hydrocarbon? You should make this clear because both are really
Both
very different.
very different topics altogether.
Yes.
किसके लिए आप यस बोल रहे हैं ये तो बताओ.
आदित्य दोनों के लिए बता दो यार, लाइक संदीप
So
इज नॉट।
hydrocarbons, obviously. So hydrocarbon is a प्योर पे केमिस्ट्री, बहुत सारे केमिकल कंपनीज के केमिस्ट्री के अंदर हाइड्रोकार्बन्स तो रहते ही हैं. सो आई डोंट नो,
Hmm.
वहाँ पे लॉजिकल क्वेश्चन बनता नहीं है. बनता हाइड्रोजन के ऊपर है कि हाइड्रोजन बेस्ड कार जो है वो टेक्नोलॉजी ऑफ द फ्यूचर है. और यू ऑलरेडी सीन रिलायंस हैज बीन कोलैबोरेटिंग. इट्स अ वेरी नीश टेक्नोलॉजी एंड बहुत नेसेंट टेक्नोलॉजी है एट दिस स्टेज. उसके ऊपर काम चल रहा है. यू नीड टू फिगर आउट व्हाट हैपेंस देयर. One of the biggest problem with hydrogen is very explosive in nature, and it needs to be properly handled. तो उसके ऊपर काम चल रहा है nascent technology. I here want to take this opportunity to make it very clear that lot of hype and EV euphoria is playing out. EV टेक्नोलॉजी अभी बहुत नेसेंट है एंड धीरे धीरे करके कंपनीज उसको डेवलप कर रही है. कभी भी इन द सुजुकी बोर्ड मीटिंग दिस वाज क्लियरली स्पेल्ड आउट इन जापान. कभी भी ऑटो कोई सेक्टर किसी ट्रांजिशन से गुजर रहा होता है तो वो दैट ट्रांजिशन हैपेंस वेरी वेरी स्लोली. ईवी की टेक्नोलॉजीज जो है बहुत सारी कंपनीज अभी मास्टर करने की कोशिश कर रही हैं. धीरे धीरे करके मास्टर किया जाएगा उनको. एंड स्लोली एंड स्टडीली यू विल फाइंड हु आर द विनर्स. अभी ईवी का नाम लेके बहुत हाइप क्रिएट किया जाता है. इवन विद इन द केमिकल स्पेस अ लॉट ऑफ कंपनीज आर राइट नाउ इन द टेस्टिंग फेज फॉर लिथियम आयन सॉल्ट्स. वो सॉल्ट जो है वो धीरे धीरे करके डेवलप होंगे. क्या एफिशिएंसी होगी उन सॉल्ट्स की, टाइम लगेगा इन सब चीजें में. नथिंग हैपेंस ओवरनाइट. ओनली इन द स्टॉक मार्केट वी स्पेकुलेट अबाउट ऑल ऑफ दीज थिंग्स. It will take nearly about 5, 10, 15 years to clearly spell out within the EV space or within the hydrogenation space कि कौन सी टेक्नोलॉजी आगे आती है और कौन एक क्लियर विनर है. तो अभी राइट नाउ पीपल नीड टू इन्वेस्ट, दे नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड द टेक्नोलॉजी, and those who will invest properly and in understanding the technologies, they will be the clear winners.
So,
I agree with Aditya because see the thing is I think what we are looking at EV. I think what we should look at is basically GV, which is green vehicle, and you EV might not be the answer. We don't know. I mean, it could be just a transition. Yeah, I think this will happen over the next 10, 15, 20 years. Which technology will prevail? I mean, as such, we all know EVs are almost century old technology. So it's not a new technology. Of course, advancements काफी हुई है. There were EVs in 1925 in New York also. So it's again the batteries were very different. So it has been revived and uh, unfortunately, it's not as green as what people think. So I don't even know, what is going to happen in the future. To be honest, which technology is something which will, replace ICE. And my feeling and my gut feeling is that EV as we see it now might not be that technology, to be honest, because there are quite a few issues, range and charging and all those. There are issues. I think these needs to be sorted out. Uh, as of now it remains niche. Of course government push करेगी कि नहीं आपको करना ही है, दूसरी व्हीकल नहीं आएगी, that is all different, but I think वो होगा नहीं. ओवर अ पीरियड कुछ नया अभी वी आर सीइंग हाइड्रोजन कंबशन हाइड्रो इंजन्स बेसिकली. तो पता नहीं क्या होने वाला है. ये सब स्टोरीज के लिए सब ठीक है, लेकिन इसमें से इन्वेस्टेबल आइडियाज कितने निकलेगी आई डोंट नो, टू बी ऑनेस्ट.
Sekhar sir, can I add on to this question further?
No, nothing new. I think it's been covered well. We just need to balance the story.
Okay. Prince, can I add to this reply something?
Please.
So the question was hydrocarbon and hydrogen. I will answer on both the parts. So yes, the thing is that like Reliance Industries per se, like had they aimed for venturing into chemicals, they would have like ventured into chemicals, whether it be bulk or be specialty, long time ago. And recently, one of the major oil companies, PSUs, ONGC, has declared its plan to venture into chemicals. Okay, so that part will always be there because hydrocarbons are the building blocks. So the petroleum is building block of a plethora of chemicals. The second part, hydrogen as a fuel. Yes, Reliance Industry with a major, I think, bus manufacturer. They have rolled out like a bus which operates purely on hydrogen fuel cell, and that is something which needs to be looked into very carefully. The problem, where this question comes from, that the future will be EV only, and there will be complete departure from ICE, that is internal combustion engine, is because our present and past has been completely dedicated to ICE, that is internal combustion engine, and hence we tend to think that the future will also be one single type of technology winning the entire playground. As sir pointed out, that the right term is actually to look out for GV, that is green vehicle, instead of getting trapped into EV per se. And in that regard, in my opinion, the coming future will be dominated by multiple technologies suited for different types of vehicles. For example, ICE may continue to flourish for very long range vehicles, whereas battery driven vehicles may flourish for in city commutes. So we need to see, since it's an evolving landscape, we need to be highly probabilistic and explore the possibilities rather than having a very deterministic approach कि नहीं past में ऐसा था तो आगे भी ऐसा होगा. This is what I wanted to add.
Great, thanks, Ravi. So one question is although the question is more around stock name, but again, I rephrase it in the sense the person is asking when it comes to holding companies. So what are the things one need to consider before investing in holding companies? Jiten sir and other speakers, whoever want to add.
So holding companies as such, they always trade at a huge discount. I've seen up to 90% discount, or up to 60%. And the thing is, uh, you have to see, is there any chance of any value unlocking? uh, तो ये कोई 90% वाली कंपनी आपको कभी 40% पे आएगी नहीं, मतलब टू बी साइकिल उसकी जब चलती है तो 90 वाली 70 में आती है तो भी आपका थ्री बैगर हो जाता है अगर आपने कर लिया तो ठीक, हाँ. बट उसमें आपको ये देखना है कि अंडरलाइंग बिजनेस जो है वो कौन सा है और उसका वैल्यूएशन क्या है वो भी देखना चाहिए. दैट इज वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, बिकॉज उसमें डी रेटिंग हुआ तो आपकी होल्डिंग कंपनी में भी डी रेटिंग होगा. सो इट्स नॉट इजी टू बी ऑनेस्ट. और वो एकदम बेयर मार्केट में आपको जब 90% प्लस के डिस्काउंट पे मिले, जहां पे डिविडेंड भी आ रहा होगा आपकी जो अंडरलाइंग एसेट पे कंपनी जो है वहां से वगैरह, देयर इज सम इनकम कमिंग इन एंड ऑल दैट, ऐसा जब हो तभी उनमें इन्वेस्ट करना चाहिए, ऐसा मेरा व्यू है. अदरवाइज आप प्योर प्ले में इन्वेस्ट किए हुए बेटर है, इज व्हाट इज माय व्यू.
Yes, I will completely agree with Jiten sir. I will give you an example. In right from 2018, the auto cycle was under a tremendous stress, and we were experiencing a down cycle. Uh, एक major OEM का holding company we got at a 90% discount at about 1,000 rupees, and as the up cycle came in, वो company 4x हो चुकी है वहां से, and the company has already given about 1,000 rupees back as debenture. So as he correctly points out, आप जो underlying company है, होल्डिंग कंपनी की जो अंडरलाइंग कंपनी है उसका साइकिल कहाँ पे है, अगर वो डाउन साइकिल में आप उसको खरीद रहे हो तो बहुत अच्छा चांस है कि वो जब कंपनी री रेट होगी तो आपकी कंपनी जो है वहां से डबल या ट्रिपल री रेट हो जाएगी. तो साइकिल ऑफ द अंडरलाइंग कंपनी इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू वॉच आउट फॉर. what discount at which you are buying. Generally, you would want to buy at the steepest discount available. I generally try to trace the chart कि कितना historical down cycle में discount रहा है. That you need to really track. Once you track the down cycle discount, which is generally about 80 to 90%, then you will have to hold on and then see how it goes. And the most important point is the underlying company corporate governance and the underlying company business should be really very strong. अगर आप स्ट्रॉन्ग कंपनीज में इन्वेस्ट नहीं करोगे, जस्ट बिकॉज ऑफ होल्डिंग कंपनी डिस्काउंट, पुअर क्वालिटी कंपनीज में इन्वेस्ट करोगे, तो चांस बहुत बड़ा है कि मार्केट वो होल्डिंग कंपनी डिस्काउंट को कभी श्रिंक ही नहीं करेगा. So holding company investing can be very rewarding for companies which are very high quality, experiencing a down cycle in the short term. If you're able to get into those companies, you will find वो नॉर्मल स्टॉक से भी बहुत ज्यादा पैसे कमा सकता है. वी हैव मेड जितना हमने इन्वेस्ट किया था उतना तो हमें डिबेंचर में वापस मिल गया था.
Thanks, Aditya. So more or less, I guess questions are covered. But again, last call. So Kaushik, Ravi, anything on your part?
Can I add something over
So, like Prince, on the holding company thing, both the previous speakers have paraphrased it very well. I would just give labels. First of all, the extent of discount available, the management under question. These two things are very important because management part takes care of that, the underlying business, how it performs, and the discount is, the scope of the opportunity available. And the third part, which is needed in the investor per se, is patience, because holding companies discount catching up, value unlocking takes tremendous amount of time. I can say this with my own experience, because I have a couple. I have invested in a couple of holding companies. You need to have very long patience. There are occasions where the holding company is not performing at all, whereas the business it holds in its kitty is performing like anything. Hence, one needs to be patient. So, if these three things are there together, it's a good area to look into, and it's a very peaceful area actually, with lot of dividend rewards.
Right. So Shekhar is like it's always already 11 p.m. Shekhar wants to leave. So Shekhar, thank you so much for chipping in today. It was great listening to your insights and the work of sharing extensive report. I must say is incredible. I thank you for that, and the community is getting benefited big time. Thank you for doing that. And
Sometimes Prince, sometimes when I get lost and when I want to understand the chemistry behind some chemicals, I will message Shekhar Bhai to say that which report have you got and tell me the report. So brilliant job he's doing on the Telegram group.
seriously, and even if I have to look for any company, then I always search for the name that if I get some relevant report around that. So Kaushik, you were unmuting. You were saying something.
Yes, please. So holding company, basically in holding company there are two types of differentiations. The
Ashik,
person
we
who
can't hear you. Can
I'm
you
audible.
come?
I'm audible
Come?
now.
Yeah.
Yes. So think like this: if the holding company, the company which holding company is holding, right? If he is giving the highest dividend yield, and that dividend is being passed on to the holding company, and holding company is also giving the dividend, those companies' discount will be very very less as per the holding company and the main company. Think about if the company is only growing in nature and not giving the dividend, and the holding company, and the difference between both will be very very wide and very high. But when it comes to in holding company, our biggest problem in holding a holding company is that you are paying taxes twice. Dividend distribution taxes will like actually kill your both the side of this dividends. It lands up to your hand is very very low, and better to even hold a company is like just go for a direct mode, and also you get better answers and better valuations for yourself, and catching them in an attractive zones or something like an very favorite formula that I have for any company that I would love to invest is that CFO, trailing 12 months CFO divided by market cap. If I'm getting a 15% yield, a cash flow yield, it doesn't matter you to even go for a holding company just to see that discount. So being very sure which company that you invest is more important than is it a holding company or not. Again, if you're going for a holding company, you have to look at a lot of other parameters. Dividend will be landing up in your hand is very very low, and there are 2 times taxes. And also you have to see that the main company, what valuations are they trading at, and that valuations will have a dividend yield percentage in a different way.
So a lot of things will be like moving. So why do you want to even have such a moving parameter company? So that's my thought about it.
Thanks, Kaushik. Really helpful. So Aditya, like we got a hand of Ravikant after a long time. Many requests so as to bring him as a speaker. So Ravikant, like let me give a hypothetical question. So if I were to ask you, if you are a new investor and you have to invest today, so what all you will be looking for investing?
You mean to say sector specific?
Yeah, whatever, like overall portfolio, how you will be building today if
Sector
you were to
specific
ask.
रखो.
Okay, so
Ravi sir, it is my
agrochemicals.
question also.
Hello.
Ravi sir, it
Go
is
ahead.
my question also.
Go
Acha,
ahead,
acha, acha,
Ravi.
wait, sorry. Okay, okay. So agrochemicals, then definitely shrimp slash seafood. Then third, metals. These three, I believe in very concentrated holdings. So these three should suffice because I'm like maybe an experience bias or like trying to be commonsensical here. Money will only be made there where the crowd is not there right now. That's pretty much from my side.
Sure. Thanks, Ravi. So, Aditya, thank you so much. So exhaustive views around the sector, and even miscellaneous questions were well taken by you and everyone, and even the views of all the speakers were very relevant and useful for our attendees. And I would request, like, these sessions where we have multiple speakers are always a bliss, and the attendees get benefited big time. So those who joined late, the recording will be uploaded on my YouTube channel. The least you guys can do is to give a what we say high five, or maybe you can simply subscribe to our channel and connect with our handle, so that we continue to get the motivation so as to bring more learned speakers and different topics so as to cover the nuances. Obviously, all the questions in the comments were not taken, and there was some issue while accepting the speaker request. I was not able to accept because that was not visible to me. So it's not like that. I don't take questions on purpose. At times it happens. There are glitches on Twitter. But again, I would sincerely request you, like, if you have interest in long term investing, you're looking so as to condition your framework, you want to get a view of different sectors, I will sincerely ask you to subscribe to the YouTube channel, not because it's my channel, but the content available, you will find that there would be very rare
Prince,
places.
let me add to that because I have used your spaces, especially the YouTube recordings, related to the healthcare one, related to chemicals one, and even to metals one. That I forget his name. I think Mr. Arora was there.
Rakesh Roda.
Yes, 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 yes. So, like, I listened to your spaces. This is the first time I'm participating live, but in general, I listen to your spaces at 0.75x speed because they are extremely rich in high quality information, and the sheer spectrum of guests, like I do not have that standing, uh, the kind of guests in general you have. But I mean, for any investor, like, and I'm saying investor, not a trader or like whatever it be, but for a proper investor who wants to participate in India's growth story, who wants to understand businesses, like how they work, it's a gold mine. And I have listened to a couple of your spaces, like at least into 5 6 times. I forget that sir's name, ICICI Bank से थे वो, like Somaiya sir, some I don't recollect his name.
Ashish Somaiya sir. Okay,
Yes,
quite.
yes, yes, yes. Amazing, about how one should think in terms of probability rather than being deterministic. So amazing work, and like kudos to you, man.
Thank you so much, brother. All good wishes of good people in the network, and
So,
people have been kind. Yeah, Aditya.
so you shared a post today where you were at 1,000 followers. I don't know your followers today, but I'm sure that you are moving to 100,000 followers. because you do great work in unbiased education of investors.
Correct.
So ये क्या ही बोलना है यार इन सभी को
Correct.
अभी
Correct.
you doing brilliant work per se.
Thank you so much, guys, and much needed appreciation, I must say, because it takes a lot of effort and reaching out to people, spending time reading about them, listening their views, coordinating on the questions. Even I get in comments, DM, and sometimes on even on WhatsApp. So it's I mean, it appears to be an easy task, but it takes a lot of time and. Some appreciation from our attendees is well taken for, and I have been getting great support. Thank you so much. Keep supporting, and surely will come up with many more spaces. And those who are like coming to Goa from 17th to 20th, surely will be meeting in person, and will come again with many more spaces after 20th. Till then, take care. Bye bye. Good night. Take care. Thanks for keeping for so long in today's spaces. And thanks, Rabi, for your maiden spaces. Many more to come.
Yes. Yes. Thanks. Thanks.